Hello, everyone. This is Technical Reserves. I'm Brinks,
I'm Zach.
I'm Troy.
I'm Amble.
And I'm Chad.
and this week we are going to basically be doing a big rundown on our feelings of Ninth. We've gotten in 3 games, and we've played as many Ninth Edition rules as we could realistically, play. We utilized the Deep Strike, which nobody could really use because our armies basically don't work well with it. We played 1,750 point games, adjusting for points increases on models. We tried a little bit of blast rules. What else did we try?
Smaller table size.
Yeah, small board, the small board, the most important one, and the CPs for the detachments. We kind of assumed, which is now wrong, that most detachments would probably cost 1 that were non-battalions, and it looks like they could very likely be 2. So 2 or more.
I just played 2 battalions, so I just paid 3 for mine.
Yeah.
One was free, one was 3, so I knew what mine was.
I paid 3 for my spearhead yesterday just to be safe.
Okay.
That rule had already come out.
Well,
I just played one battalion.
you just played 1 battalion, and what did you play?
Mostly play 1 battalion.
Okay. Well, I played a battalion and an air wing detachment, and as much as they're kind of like dialing in planes, I'm guessing it's going to cost more than 1 CP. So I feel like I maybe had this game at least with 1 extra CP, maybe 2, than what I'm actually going to end up with. Which it didn't matter. I ended the game, it was like 8 CP anyway, so.
We used the new aircraft rules. We used the new heavy rules for vehicles, and
Yep.
they ignore it. We used the shooting in combat for vehicles.
Overwatch rules.
New Overwatch rules.
Pretty much everything has been spoiled.
Yeah.
Except for we really didn't do a lot with.
We haven't messed with terrain a lot. Like,
No.
we're still just playing bottom floor line of sight blocking.
That is true.
I need to see more. I need to read more. I need to understand more before we start playing with that, I think.
Yeah, I think having all of that codified, all of the terrain, would make it much
Yeah,
easier
'cause
to
it's so
designate.
split up now the way they've spoiled it. It's kind of hard to the big picture of how the train's going to work.
Yeah. So before we go into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about this week in hobbying. I've been working on my Necrons. I actually picked up some more Agrax Earthshade to continue rusting. I've kind of got my list where I know I want it. I'm going to get more destroyers. So I focused on that. I've got my destroyers done now. I've got a full complete look for Tomb Blades, and I went ahead and rusted the rest of them. And I'm getting ready to cut the barrel off of my Annihilation Barge. What's the
Doomsday Arc?
Doomsday Arc? I'm going to cut the barrel off the Doomsday Arc this week so that I can start painting them up properly. If I decide to play them for sure. I'm not even sure if they're going to have a home in 9th edition compared to what they do now, because I imagine they're going to get a points hike, and they're kind of fringe playable in my opinion compared to destroyers. What about you, Zach?
I've been painting. I finally figured out my paint scheme for my Custody jet bike, so I've been painting on that a lot. And I've started the basing process on my Marauder, because it's a project for such a large model. You need a lot of counterweight.
It is absurd to see it in person.
Yeah.
How about you, Anvil?
I've been converting my Doom crawlers to Icarus arrays. So I had to. The way the kits work, the piece that mounts the turret, so the guns all mount to like a little 3-piece kind of makes a cylinder, and you only get 1 of those. So you either have to magnetize it, which I didn't do because it was kind of fiddly, or either you try to buy the bits, but the bits were all sold out online. So I ended up 3D printing a little cylinder with the tabs that lock in place, so I can make, put all the Icarus arrays, boxes and guns and stuff on it. And I ended up losing two guns. I don't know where the barrels went. They were in my bits. Well, some of the bits for the Doom Crawlers had managed their way into the Iron Strider box. I don't know how that. I have little organized boxes for all my bits, and I found all the pieces except for the 2 barrels of the guns. So I used 2 of the Iron Strider guns. I just cut the barrels off and glued them, and they're a little bit shorter than the Icarus arrays, but
Probably look good.
they look fine.
How about you, Troy?
I'm about halfway, and more like 40% done on my Keeper of Secrets. So I got a base and I've been trying contrast. I haven't worked too much with contrast, so it's been experience.
Yeah, I really like the contrast line though. It's pretty sweet. I think for that model, it's gonna be nice. And lastly, we have Chad, who's new to the podcast. He played a game this week, and he's gonna be the guy that we hopefully all here actively get better at Warhammer. Because he's the newest out of everybody. So, what have you been hobbying on?
Much harder to get worse.
Yeah, it is harder to
It
get
is
worse.
harder to get worse. I've been building my intercessors, putting them as the screws and finally gluing them together. I'm going to base them this week and start painting them. And I'm waiting on my Repulsor Executioner to get here in the mail from Europe.
Okay, and why don't you tell everybody what you're playing?
I play Ultramarines. I am the lone Smurf player in the group, as everybody flips me off in the room at the moment. Nobody likes Ultramarines, but I like Ultramarines because Bobby G's always been overpowered, and I like Dreadnoughts and Orcs, and I feel like it was the easiest army to learn starting from new less than a year ago.
Makes sense, and Chad was also one of the big MTG guys that we played with as well, competitive, so we assume he'll be able to get it down. And he's getting it, but it's a hard game to catch up on when all of us have been playing pretty competitively for quite a while now.
That's a fairly steep learning curve. But,
It does.
Like you understand the game, but then you start playing competitive games and you don't realize the interplay, and you get especially like Chad, I think still gets locked into it, and I do sometimes. You get locked into killing things. Like, I got to shoot this thing, I got to kill this thing, and you're not locked into I can blow this unit off this objective, and that'll give me hold more for the turn, and that's 2 extra points as opposed to you kill this unit and it didn't really add to your point total.
Yeah, you killed non-relevant. You did bad target priority and stuff like that. I could definitely see that.
I agree. Of the 25 games I've played, most of the ones I've lost have just got pointed out because I've focused too much on trying to kill things and not going to get the objectives and everything like that.
Yeah. He's doing the castle thing too, or he was, with the 4 Dreadnoughts, so it's a pretty interesting list. But with that being said, we might as well just go ahead and go into, now this week, like I said, it's gonna be, we played 3 games. We did Chad versus Zach, me versus Anvil, and Troy versus Zach, right?
Yep.
This week. So we're gonna go over all those games. The first one we'll start with though is Chad versus Zach, and then we'll jump to me and Anvil, and we'll finish back on Troy and Zach this week. So first off, who won the game?
Zach won the game.
All right, and what generally happened to end in that result? Was it just like a total blowout? Was it a close point game?
I won the roll, and I decided to go second, which I think now was probably a bad decision because I couldn't hide my Dreadnought.
And you're an Alpha Strike army?
Correct. And I was just trying to hide some stuff around, and it did not work. My Dreadnought died on the first turn, and from that point on, his bikes kind of ran roughshod until I altered my plan and ran Bobby G around the other side of the table to try to handle him. But at that point, I was already he was 3-pointing me every turn.
Yeah. All right. So, what was your overall strat with or what was the deployment? Do we know that?
Hammer and Anvil.
Hammer and Anvil.
It's hammer and anvil every time.
Okay. So what was your strat on that game, Zach?
Mostly stay out of Bobby G's hair. And I failed at that at one point with my big squad of bikes. But I was playing that game. I think I played a patrol of Custodes and a battalion of guard, if I remember right. But I'm playing Demolisher tank commanders now, because you just don't have the CPs to build the Vigilus Defiant stuff and take the Hammer of Sunderance and all that. It's too CP intensive for my liking. So I've switched to Demolishers, and you play the custom regiments now instead of having to play Talern for your heavy move without penalty. And adding 6 inches to Demolishers is crazy good.
Yeah, that does sound pretty good, actually.
So just shoot the heavy stuff with the Demolishers, and then go around and snag objectives and knock them off objectives with bikes. Stay away from Bobby G.
Yeah, so if you were to play the game again, Chad, what would you do differently other than go first? Because that can't be the only thing that cost you the game.
Well, part of my army, I had 2 squads of Hellblasters, and I paid the 10 extra points apiece to have them the heavy detachment. I would
The heavy guns.
the heavy guns. I would not have the heavy guns because I think the rapid fire would have been better. I would have been able to. It took both squads to kill one of his tanks, and I probably could have done it with one squad, and then my dreadnought could have shot at the tank that blew it off the board on the first turn, even with Duty Eternal.
Yeah.
Having
Okay.
the CP.
Well, with that being said, tactically, what would you have done different? Not just with changing your list. Like, what did you? Yeah, I mean, I assume every game like I play, whether win or lose, I do something wrong, and I recognize those bad movement phases, because it's usually bad movement phase more than anything. Because you assume when you shoot, at least I do, you're gonna roll the law of averages, and you're gonna do the average amount of expected damage, which means if you roll average, then you probably made a bad movement phase. Otherwise,
Well, I think, like you discussed earlier, going first, so he gets to use his dreadnought,
yeah,
is probably pretty good.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, to me that's a definite.
Well, the dreadnoughts have what, 28 or
24 inch.
24 inch?
yeah.
So you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I
Them
can
going
just,
first
just
limits
deploy
me
out of
much.
the range of the dreadnought, drive into the range, and still kill it. Like,
Because if you remember,
that doesn't change much at all. What happened, I think, was he started to roll Bobby G to my right, be his left, to deal with the tank commander, and I ran 450 points worth of Custodes bikes on.
Did you have the dreadnought that game?
Yeah, but it was a deep strike. The left side of his flank. So then he doubled back with Bobby G, so he lost an entire
A whole
Turn.
movement phase.
Correct.
entire turn of movement trying to chase down things. I mean,
That's-
he eventually got into the bikes and did work on them, but
So
that's
it,
my fault. But
Yeah.
he definitely lost a turn, maybe two,
Also,
in his own deployment, just fading the wrong way.
that
Yeah.
games he wasted a captain and scepters. He dropped him back on that.
wouldn't say wasted.
He didn't choose a good target to go after. He went after a captain on a bike, if I remember right.
Yeah, I should have went after the tank on the other side, and Zach's right. I wasted an entire movement phase moving Bobby to the other side of the board. He should have just kept walking up and took out the tank that killed my dreadnought, and then I could have came through the backside, and it would have maybe forced his deep strike
element drag.
to come down over there and try to handle Bobby G, and then everything else could have just handled that.
Well, according to Zach, the Telemon can't handle anything right now. So
I've played it very poorly. I keep putting it out of position. It never gets to punch anything.
Yeah, it's never like died and not got anything. It's just
never done anything. It's just
yeah,
like
it's never been impactful.
Yeah.
It's just like 260 points of wandering around the board.
260 points of dirt.
I went second, and I panicked when my dreadnought died because that was my entire plan. I'm gonna have this in the castle with my Tech Marine and Bobby G, and I'm gonna re-roll stuff. And then it took like 28 and exploded. That happened too. It
Yeah.
blew up and took out some stuff, even with a re-roll.
Well, that's something like I definitely think you just have to be prepared for, especially as like a Castle Ultramarines player. Like you're playing one target that's like an obvious priority, right? That
Yes.
can't be hidden.
It could not.
Well,
I
you-
tried to hide
well,
it.
Well, I mean, that can't be like character protected.
Yeah.
So like if you can shoot it, it can be shot.
Correct.
So what you should have done, because of the new heavy movement rules, is put it behind a building.
It started.
well, he's Ultramarines. He ignored it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's never really had that.
Yeah, so why wasn't it behind a building?
It was the start, but
Well, it got killed on the first turn, so it
He-
definitely was not.
it wasn't all the way behind it. It was in the
So
middle.
it was
He was going to go out the army. And I was going to go.
Bad deployment.
bad deployment.
It was a bad deployment.
So that's what I'm talking about, though. These are the things you got to realize are these like knowing your role. You're an Alpha Strike Army, knowing target priority, the bikes coming across the field, and knowing what you have that you have to protect at all costs. The Dreadnought on the first turn if you're not going to play the Alpha Strike role. You understand what I'm
Bobby
saying?
G's protected.
And
I,
you only
castled,
took
I
one.
just castled wrong.
Yeah.
And spent points where I shouldn't have.
But these are things I want to talk about on here because it's not about building the best list. It's about recognizing making bad plays, and I feel like if we focus on that
Yeah.
and we let people hear about the things that we do wrong, because I won my game this week and I definitely did some really stupid shit I'm going to talk about. So it's okay to make mistakes, especially.
I definitely prioritized having 1,750 points exactly over maybe
Quality.
taking a
Yeah.
better quality unit. Like I could have probably not played one of those Hellblaster squads and played more scouts and like maybe put Tigarius in there because Cyclers are strong.
And scout
against
deploying
him.
is insane.
Well, Tiggy also gives them a -1 to hit.
Yeah, you could,
And you're
you
used
could
to
have been in
playing.
the castle with Bobby and -1 to
We
hit.
don't have to be in a castle anymore, though.
No, he could just move around.
Yeah.
18-inch range on that. I mean, it's gross.
So he can be next to intercessors or the dreadnought or whatever it is.
Or maybe not deep struck my captain and just casted him around 3 squads of intercessors and they all reroll as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff I could have done different.
Yeah, like there was there were guardsmen holding a back objective, right?
The squad of 3 things.
Because I thought
3 sentinels.
3
Scout
sentinels.
It wasn't a battalion. I took a outrider of guard and a patrol of. There wasn't any guard troops yet.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I think maybe he dropped in that. He dropped in 3 inceptors and a captain, and then he went after your shield captain on Donegal jet bike.
I should have went after the.
Which is not going to be profitable. He could have dropped him in over by the objective, and dropped in the captain, and then shot it, and then smashed your sentinels and tried to take that
Take
objective
that
back there.
objective. That would have.
But instead, it sat over there for a turn.
Yeah.
It sat over there for a turn, and then ended up getting obliterated.
And I think the most important thing about improving as a player is recognizing not when the right thing happens, because everybody knows the right thing, like kill their shit, take the points. Like it's knowing when you did the wrong thing, like you know what I mean. Like you did the less optimal choice. Like sure, you're like I'm gonna hold this objective, but could you have killed something and removed it from an objective and how you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
it's definitely recognizing.
I think a
plays
lot
like
was
that.
also recognizing what your units do well. So, like, he dropped inceptors in there, and they have heavy boulders. But he's shooting against a captain with a 2-up, 4-up. So it's like,
Yeah, I was hoping.
you're not going to get
I
wound
was hoping
shooting.
my captain.
And the
would
captain
relic.
can get in there and
2
do
and 3.
And he wounds them on 5s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just
T6.
Whereas you go over to that, like you're still wounding the sentinels on 5s, right? They're T6, but they have what, a 4-up save or 3-up?
They have a 3-up save.
And that's where they.
But still, your points, but then the 4th. But the captain goes in there and
he does
makes hay on the sentinels.
And that was
Yeah.
my biggest debate right there. That's where the game ended because I went for that because his warlord was there too. And I took old school, and that was going to be another point. And there was an objective there. I'm like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to shoot them, I'm going to kill him, get his warlord, get that point, take the objective. That's going to be gone. The bikes are dead now. And my intercessor could just walk up with Bobby and then go after it. And I definitely should have went for the back
Because the
objective.
warlord had a
Yeah.
2-up, 3-up with a 6-up feel no pain,
5-up.
well,
5-up
that-
feel no pain,
yeah.
and had 2 extra wounds. So
Yeah,
it
and
was
that's a law of averages. You can go, okay, well, I've got this many dice. I'm going to succeed on this many hits on average, this many wounds. He's going to negate this many wounds, and then he's going to feel no pain, this much damage off of that many wounds. You're going to go, whoa, these heavy bolters that seem insane are going to net me like 2-3 damage, maybe.
As Zach said, the learning curve is high.
Yeah,
I'm playing
it's
one
just
of the easiest armies. The learning curve is high.
yeah.
and the playing is easy. It's the figuring out.
Strategy is hard.
Well, yeah, it's you just gotta, over time you learn especially playing your army, getting reps. You learn like, oh well, this thing's just never gonna kill that. It's just never, like those things. I need high AP shots against this, or like I found this good against captains or whatever. Just shoot all the crappy shots you can at them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
because you got to kill them with volume of fire.
yeah, just make them roll as many dice as you can, because that's your only shot of making them fail.
I agree with that. I think wasting high quality shots on captains and hoping that they just don't roll a 2 or a 3 is way worse than just throwing chaff at them and hoping to get in a couple of chip shots. Like that's how I always handle a unit like that. Like if it's not an easily killable unit, I'm just gonna throw chaff at it and not deal with it unless it's like a problem that has to be handled. So with it being said, so as you won, but you said you made a bad play at least on bikes.
I made a few bad plays. I mean, I ran a Hellhound into his castle, thinking that I would be sneaky and just explode. And there's no need to do that at all. It did like 3 wounds to Bobby G, but that's not worth losing an entire tank over.
Especially a Hellhound. That thing's a beast.
And then I flew my bike, and I was killing intercessors and stuff, but I shouldn't. You can't. I got too heavy into trying to kill more on the turn, and I got my bikes too close to Bobby G, and then he killed 4 of them with a fight and then a fight again strat. So that's super brutal.
Yeah.
That was before we knew about the morale phase shenanigans too. We played that game on Monday.
Monday, yeah.
So I don't know. I might have lost another bike to morale at that point.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
definitely
didn't-
possible.
I didn't that game, and I managed to fly it away from him for the rest of the game. But That was a really bad play. And then I've deep struck the Telemon twice now into seems the middle of nowhere. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know if I have it kitted wrong or what I'm doing wrong. It never does anything. It just meanders around the board. 260 points. People just walk away from it.
Now, is this the double fist loadout or the fist gun loadout?
It's the fist and not the expensive gun, the strength 7 gun.
Okay, I feel like the best place for it to be is just like it's going to be hard to get it in there, but it's just kind of like back in your opponent's deployment zone and just kind of like shoveling stuff forward.
I think what I'm going to do from now on, instead of trying to deep strike it and be sneaky, because the new Psychic Awakening came out, and you can give it an extra attack, and it gets to reroll charges for a CP. And I was playing the new Dread Host thing. When it comes in from deep strike, you can pay a CP and then roll 3d6, discard the lowest. I was like, for sure I'd make it in, and I didn't, because it's still not guaranteed.
happens,
on
yeah.
3 dice, he rolled a total of 7.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty
It was
rough.
bad.
And he re-rolled it. He rolled it and got
re-roll.
Well,
rolled it, got
there was
8, then re-rolled it and got
there
7.
was a discussion about CP and 1 die or trying to re-roll the whole thing for free.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, what I think I'm going to do from now on is just put it on the front line. It's got a 2-up save and a 4-up invulnerable, and it's got 14 wounds. It's not going to be easy to kill.
Yeah.
And I'll just run it at the face of people and use it more as a distraction. I'd rather it be a distraction card effects and get shot off the board
Yeah.
than just be 260 points meandering around their back
It
line.
would've
So-
Yeah,
changed
not
my
priority.
entire
It's a plow. You're just going to plow the road with
It's
it.
Yeah,
also
and that's
a deterrent.
that's-
Like, nobody wants to go into that.
Yeah,
zone.
my whole strategy would have changed. I would have castled on the other
I
side
thought I
of the
needed
board.
to be
if it was
cute
there.
with it. Instead, I think I just need to run it up into people's face.
And there's a lot to be said for that. Now, not necessarily versus us, because like we know what it is. But like if you're going to a random tournament or something like that, like plopping something like a Telemann Dread down on the table in the front lines, a lot of people that don't like really have target priority dialed in are gonna be like, oh shit,
Big Dreadnought.
big dreadnought.
I'd
That thing's
I'd much rather you shoot a Telemann with a 2-up, 4-up than that my tank commander just got a 3-up and no invulnerable.
yeah.
Like, so if I can manage to run him up there and take the big shots for a turn, and get my tank commanders to shoot another turn, because Demolisher tank commanders are no joke. They're seriously powerful.
Also, there's something to be said for the human interaction of if you're playing someone new for the first time and someone just confidently walks up and slaps their dreadnought right in the very front of the line, like this thing is coming forward.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Oh,
Oh.
okay,
this
then.
guy's
Yeah.
coming in my business. Like, that's going to be a problem. You automatically think like he's planning on doing stuff with that thing, not necessarily I'm putting this thing up here so you will put a ton of fire into it.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think plays like that I agree. That's a super solid play. Like.
That's what happened to me. Like one of my second game, Troy's like, "Here's Mortarion, just right in the front." I'm like, "What is
Yeah.
that thing?"
Well,
That is a threat, though. That's a
Mortarion is a
difference.
ball of death. You have
Yeah,
to kill him.
You
right?
have to kill him, and he's
Like
only
that thing's bigger
T7.
than everything in my army.
Well, you have to attempt to kill him.
There's no deceit there if I'm going to bring him up.
Yeah, like he's
coming-
definitely coming in on the first turn.
I
That's a
didn't-
bad
I
example.
didn't even know what it was. I was like, "That's a big demon. I'm in trouble."
Yeah,
He's bad.
yeah. If he comes in, it's pretty bad. But well, it sounds like it. You know, it was a good game. This is the thing I think we could focus on because everybody knows the rules of the game. If you're listening to competitive podcasts, you already know all that. I think it's about identifying how to improve as a player. And, you know, even when you win, because just because you win doesn't mean you didn't make mistakes, for sure. Like that, you said running the bikes up and the Dread not doing anything.
No, I didn't respect Bobby G's +2 to his charge ability as much as I should have. So I was like, oh, he's going to have like an 8-inch charge. It's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
I can risk it. And then it's like,
Then
it's
I
a
went
6-inch
12 inches.
charge.
So
And then he rolled well. And it's like, oh no, now they're all dead. Like,
Yeah.
I could have just not been that close and not had a problem. That was a really big
I think
mistake.
the only unit in my entire army that I really know its true power is him.
But we also discussed you could have just ran your bikes away. There were 2 L's in the middle, you know, separating the center objective, and the bikes fly. So Bobby G's a monster. He can't pass through
Yeah.
the wall, so he could have just flown the bikes to the center objective. And even if Bobby G advances and moves forward,
Well, I mean,
Good.
he has to go around.
The damage was done at that point. I flew the bikes back there to take out 2 intercessor squads in a turn. And they did. But then I was just too close to... I mean, like, in retrospect, yeah, I could fly around it. And I could fade away from him better than what I did with my 1 bike I had left. that's not really relevant.
But it also might have been a saving grace. You got to look at it because he had to spend a whole turn going over there to fight him.
That's
Like,
true. He did lose
you
an entire
completely-
turn moving.
You basically saved your tank commander,
It's true.
who maybe not got a lot of production out of him, but he was still around. So you did lose some bikes, yeah, but you were able to kind of dictate where.
Well, the
Bobby
bikes
G
are
was
more
for the rest of
important
the
in
game.
that stage of the game. After
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, going around and snatching objectives.
Because
Amazing.
he'd already eliminated the Dreadnought, and his basically other heavies were the Hellblasters, which the bikes could mop up,
Yes.
no problem.
But Bobby G never made it to Zach's deployment zone,
Yeah.
probably because of that play.
Correct.
That's true.
He altered his plan.
Yeah.
The only last thing I'll say about that game, because there was a lot to learn from, is that I felt like my army had infinite command points just because getting them back and re-rolling everything. Even
Yeah.
with the new style of command points, starting with 9, I felt like I was at like 10 or 12 the whole game, and I spent them on what I should have spent them on. And I didn't fire Overwatch once, even with infinite command points.
Okay, now that's something else I want to ask. So that's your impression of the game. What was your impression of the 9th edition vibes of the game? What did you like and didn't you like, Zach?
Like the gameplay feels good. My biggest complaint about 9th edition so far, and we're still getting trickle in rules updates and whatever, but it's the list building phase. Like I play a lot of guard, and it's really nice to take the Vigilist attachments. And the new Custodes book's got the new Psychic Awakening book. There's a million great strategies in that book. You want to play with all the stuff. And I'm just so constricted in the list building portion of 9th edition. It's just,
But I think
I can't justify taking a Vigilist attachment and then paying a CP for a relic to get the Hammer of Sunderance anymore. It's so taxing.
Yeah.
And like in 8th edition, I take the Emperor's Wrath Artillery and I take the Emperor's Fist Tank Company and I play 2 battalions. And then I still have room for Custodes or whatever else I want. And I get to do all the cool stuff. Now I get to choose and do like a third of the cool stuff. It's very frustrating so far. Like I'm sure I'll get used to it. But right now I'm like used to having everything I want. And
Yeah.
and the taxes take more guardsmen. It's like it's not that big of a deal. And the new tax is just like, ugh.
I kind of like that's the restriction. That's the box you got to play in, and it's going to be how you build in that box that
Yeah, I
makes the list unique.
I prefer being taxed on having to take troops because the troops I play are cheap.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
And I don't mind taking 90 guardsmen or 110 guardsmen. It's not that big of a deal.
But
It's worth getting the CPs. Now that I'm having to play inside this little box, I feel like all my creativity and all my sneaky stuff I can do is really limited down and shrank down and compressed. Because now I'm starting games at like 6 CPs where I was starting at like 15.
But you're the
And I
army.
get half the detachments I used to have.
Yeah.
You're the army. The only army can do that though.
Right.
Every other army
That's what I'm saying.
was restricted
For
because
me personally, it sucks.
I'd say most armies are actually kind of happy that they're going to start with somewhere in the 12 to 9 range.
I feel like I definitely have a minority opinion on this, but it's just I was being super creative with my list, and now I feel like I have to be super conservative, and I don't get to take all the cool toys, and it sucks.
I understand that. I do think I agree with Amble as far as like putting everybody in this same size box will eventually equal out, and they probably aren't going to get it all right on the first try, right? Because nothing's ever perfect. But I do think like what this does is because before, if you were playing Imperium, outside of the crazy Marine stuff, you basically were required to pay a guard tax to have CPs. So like everybody had to do that.
I agree. It wasn't great for the game, but as a guard player,
Yeah, it definitely is more restrictive. Like
I understand that I'm like a very niche group that's complaining about it, but it's like there's so many good rules out there. I want to play with them all, and now I can't. You just can't justify using the Vigilance book at all.
I think
there's no need for it.
I think you're still fine. I think you're overestimating like.
Well, now they could change how like the detachments work for like the Vigilance book. They could find out that they're too expensive to purchase, so they may say, well, those are going to be free with your Warlord battalion or whatever. That's something that hopefully would happen, because I do agree 2 CP for not souping seems kind of excessive.
Well,
to
yeah,
put.
it's just one CP for the detachment. They just painted one for the relic.
Yeah, but that's the reason you take the detachment.
But now
like,
we know patrols cost 2 CPs, so like a spearhead's probably going to cost 2 CPs. Then you're paying another CP for your vigilist.
Yeah, that's
and
why
then
I
you're paying
agree.
a CP for your
But,
relic.
but,
Now
not,
you buy a
three.
but not necessarily everyone takes it for like that specific one. Yeah, you take it for the relic. A lot of times you take it because they get it, like the Emperor's Wrath gave you the ability, give you access to a stratagem and the reroll, right?
Yeah, you get the access to the stratagem to shoot twice, but right now you're so taxed in taking the artillery company that you don't really have the CPs to shoot twice every turn.
Yeah.
Now, should you be able to shoot twice every turn? That's a different debate.
Yeah.
But right now, in 8th edition, I can, and I like doing that.
Yeah. So we'll definitely see how that goes, but I understand some of your frustrations there, but I do think it's on the right track to flattening, the power level throughout the format.
Well, because the 8th edition is a lot about using powerful stratagems to do things.
Yeah,
and
I
Guard
wholeheartedly agree.
generated all the CP and started with all the CP, and other armies were restricted to points. So I get it.
I'm going to cool off in a minute. I won't talk as much. But right now, it's like Guard, specifically, their stratagems aren't super high impact. They're not Blood Angel stratagems where you get to do all the crazy stuff or get an extra D3 attacks and all this stuff. Like, their stratagems make mediocre units better.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's scared of a single basilisk. Like, you give it a 10 case, make it a flat 3 damage, and you shoot it twice a turn. Then you're starting to get somewhere. Like, a lot of the Guard stratagems are make mediocre units better. And you need to play a lot of them to make your entire army good. And that's how it's balanced in 8th edition. Yeah, you have to take a bunch of guardsmen, but you get to shoot your good stuff or your mediocre stuff at a good rate. Like, I feel like it's balanced for Guard in 8th edition right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think Guard is going to be as good.
Well, yeah, I think what they were one of the first codexes for 8th edition, right? So that makes perfect sense that it was kind of built around
And
that.
they don't get the super high impact stratagems that a lot of other
Yeah.
And they were the reason. I mean, Guard was basically the whole reason rules changed in 8th edition.
Yeah, I know
The
they were
CP
broken at the beginning.
The
and
CP,
stuff.
getting the CP back, all that was because of Guard.
Yeah.
Guard.
Well, it was Guard and Blood Angels.
Well, Guard was generating like 20 CP a game because you got them back. When there was no limit to getting them back.
Yeah.
You were just.
Well, Blood Angels also had a thing that did that, and they were taking the Guard and Blood Angels thing, and they were both getting to roll for the same.
And Blood Angel stratagems are a lot stronger than Guard stratagems.
Yeah.
Well,
so I do think the thing to keep in mind with that goes is you say that there are a bunch of low impact stratagems. I think it's picking which low impact stratagems you just don't care about now.
Right.
And maybe
But that makes the whole army weaker.
Yeah, I
Like,
understand. Like it's not a jack of all trades army. It's got to play a role now because before you're like I've got an answer for everything. I've got 2 answers for everything because all my shit's cheap.
Right.
And we still don't know everything. Like this, like there still might be a Guard, and they might. GW knows it's a CP intensive army, and they might come out and say, Guard has this special rule. If you're all Guard, you get an extra.
Well, like I don't think
or detachments are free. Like we don't know what's coming down the road.
you can play Guard entirely without CPs. It's just super powered down. You just consistently pay CPs to shoot your guns twice, or to get rerolls here, or to do this and do that. You just do that constantly because your units are pretty mediocre otherwise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But as far as CP-driven armies, like Custodes is definitely like you don't get anything out of Custodes if you're not paying CPs to do the really cool stuff with them. Like they just don't die. They're not particularly fast. They don't.
I think the bikes are plenty fast, especially on a smaller table. The bikes.
Well, now they've got
Bikes
more
are-
I so I mean that's a benefit to people that are trying to do
Like
monofaction.
the swooping dive thing is like super important to them, and the new transhuman version is really good for Custodes. Like all this stuff's really good, and the extra warlord trait, like all that stuff's really high impact for Custodes or Blood Angels, getting the 3d6 charge and deep strike and all this stuff that they get to do for their CPs is way higher impact than anything Guard does.
I
Yeah.
agree. Being like just an outsider, not knowing a lot about his army, like I start with 10, he starts with 4. That's not fair.
Well, no,
He
it is
needs
because
his-
he's paying to do
Yeah.
powerful
I
things. Like that's the
understand.
concept. Is like he's paying to also have. You're playing a monofaction army.
Mhm.
He's not playing a monofaction army. Like there are he deep struck stuff. You didn't.
Yes.
Okay, there are costs
both
involved
started with
to do
12.
powerful things.
Yeah.
It's balancing those costs. It's not that it's not fair. It's that it's maybe not balanced yet. But it's on the right track. Like, you should start with less CP. You shouldn't get to have all the toys, all the CP, all the access to the most powerful stratagems, which is 8th edition right now.
It's like
Right.
you have to choose
I agree.
what toys, like what tools you want out of the tool. You're like, okay, I'm gonna need this and this and this.
Yeah,
It
see,
limits
I think
my creativity while it
Your
expands
biggest-
everybody else's.
Yeah.
I think.
Now,
Your
see,
biggest hang up is
I
your
do
army
think-
needs 2 detachments
Yes.
to take 2
Yeah, it
different
definitely
vigilance
does.
detachments. So then you're paying,
Yes,
upwards of
it's-
5 CP just to have 2 different vigilance
No,
detachments. If
obviously.
you were to take 1 brigade, which is easy in guard,
Yeah.
and then just make pick one of the vigilance, you'd be at 12 CP.
And that's to say, I'm wondering if a brigade, like, they haven't released anything that I've seen on brigade yet. I'm wondering if a brigade will actually, like, give you 1 CP instead of have a cost, if it's your warlords faction, instead of have a cost built in, because it is hard to build a brigade. And that could be a way to reward guard players, is to say, specifically guard, because they're about the only thing that typically wants
It's about the only thing that can build a brigade.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
some people can do it, but
but it's real hard.
Marines were starting to play brigade.
Yeah,
for
and
a while.
Necrons can build a brigade, and it's not
It's
like
just
I built
usually-
a
Well,
brigade.
but like
1750
Custodes
list.
cannot literally build a brigade.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
a lot of armies are going to get a brigade. It's just going to be 2,000 points or more. Like you're going to be like guard gets it for what 1,100.
You can build right now in 8th edition. I think you can build the cheapest guard brigade for like 680.
Yeah, so
It's insane.
Most armies is going to be your whole army.
My 8th edition list that I've been playing for like 2 months now, well, before COVID, was a brigade and a battalion.
Yeah, and you weren't like, I mean, you were playing powerful units in that, but I think I
3
will
tank
say
commanders, Bastos, Waverns, like
I see where it restricts your creativity, but I do think long term, once there's a meta, it's going to. I feel like you'll feel more creative because now instead of just being like, well, I could throw all these tools in this box and use it, you're going to be like, which tools do I perceive as the most powerful things in the format? So you're going to feel like you can do more niche things because everybody can't take everything. So you're going to make a choice to take something non-meta that maybe other people don't see the value in because they can't just throw it in there. Right now, you just throw all the fucking shit in there and you're good.
Right, yeah.
Like,
It's true.
That's what
so
I,
you may feel
like-
creative, but
like
long
my,
term.
my creativity right now is in my list building stage, figuring out how to get as many CPs as possible.
Yeah.
But in 9th edition, it's all about like my mono guard list are 1 battalion, and I would never run a single battalion in 8th edition. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I definitely see like guard primarily like has obviously taken really the biggest hit, but not without question on the CP front. So what's up?
I agree with everything you're saying, but my biggest thing is that if I was Zach and I spent hours and hours building and painting this army and it's worked like this forever, I would feel exactly how he does. About no
he
one
can
starting
still-
with so many.
He's
CP.
going to be able to take every.
It's going to be
unit he
better
has.
in the long run. It is.
He's
It's
not-
going to all
but-
even out, but
he's
if
not
I've been
starting with less CP. He's spending his CP.
correct.
And it's going to be a lot
This
easier
is
for him to take pretty much every unit outside of super heavies for him to really talk
We
about.
just need to see points adjustments
Yeah.
before. Points adjustments are going to be like if guard gets shit on points too, it's going to be bad.
Right.
But I think they're going to be one of the armies that take the least point increases out of everybody because they're getting the wind blown out of their sails.
Well,
on
also-
CP.
also-
I really feel like Demolisher tank commanders are going to go through the roof. They're not really-
Also, Games Workshop is big on keeping the flavor of your army the same, and the flavor of guard is that they just have cheap waves and waves and waves and waves of cheap bodies.
You could still get what upwards of 14 tanks in 1 detachment, but he's not going to be hurting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I feel sorry for him. I'm just saying if I was him, I would be feeling
Yeah.
the same way.
all the reasoning's justified. I think long term it will feel good.
I'm not like super salty about it.
No,
I'm
you're
not,
definitely not. I've seen you super salty. You're
I'm
pretty
not
reasonable
like going to
on
sell
this.
my army on
I'm more
No,
salty about the
it's
super
just-
heavy thing.
It's just frustrating that right now I find it a lot more fun to build 8th edition lists than I do 9th edition lists. And it's a new format, and I don't feel like it should be like that.
Yeah, I will agree. I mean, even as a Necrons player, like I was like, well, I've got to take only a battalion. Like I was like doing everything I could to only take a battalion, and I couldn't. But I definitely was like the list building went from like I gotta figure out how to creatively take as many detachments as possible to where I've got to creatively figure out how to fit as many units as possible
Right.
into this one detachment.
Right.
Like it's definitely the polar opposite feeling. It's like now there's like this perceived huge restriction in list building phase, which I'm okay with because my army doesn't need all those detachments. But I could definitely see if I had like Imperium armies or especially Guard, like I would be like, man. But I do think you're going to be utilizing Brigade a lot more, and that's going to solve a lot of problems.
Well, how did
I
you?
didn't even realize you could take 6 elites in a battalion until last night when I started building a list.
Yeah,
It's like it's
6
just
elites.
it's just not something you could take 6 troops and you could take 6 elites, and that's not something I ever knew because why would I ever do that?
yeah.
But now I can, and now I will.
How did your first taste of building go against Anvil?
So we'll go ahead and jump into the next game. So I did play Anvil this week, and I was playing Necrons, and he was playing AdMech, and we did pretty much the same rule set that Zach and Chad did, because we played Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And I was playing pretty well close to the kind of current list. I went down to 2 Doomsday Arcs. I played the 3 Doom Blades. I played Tomb Blade unit. I played heavy or destroyers, not heavy destroyers. And then I filled in with as many immortals as I could. And it honestly, the list, like at 1750, still feels pretty stout. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was real happy with the way the list felt. But I'll go over what happened on mine. You want to go over your list though first, Anvil?
Yeah, I played pretty much what's been my standard AdMech list, a little bit pared down. I played 2 battalions. I had 4 squads of Rangers with a arquebus sniper rifle in it, then 2 squads of Vanguard. I played 4 Dragoons with tasers. I played 3 Dune Crawlers with the neutron lasers. I played 3 of the hoverboat tanks with the mortars. And I played 2 squads of 10 Electro Priests in the Dune Rider transports. Now, I just trimmed a couple Dune Crawlers from my list, or a couple Dragoons from my list, and moved a little bit of war gear around to trim down the points. And in retrospect, we were talking about going back. I think I made a big error in my list building. I should have trimmed Dune Crawlers because they have the big laser,
Yeah.
and the lasers aren't really effective against Necrons.
Yeah, I think now this is the thing. We were in the list building phase, and Anvil went at it from I'm trimming 2,000 points. I'm not building a 1750 list. I'm trimming a 2,000 point list to fit the game. And the big downside, one of them we discussed was the Electro Priests. In hindsight, were not super solid in the matchup, and maybe the Icarus Array loadout on the Doom Crawlers could have been better.
I
given the situation.
definitely would have, but I wanted some punch, and that's the one thing my army AdMech really lacks. They get a lot of shots, but you just don't have a lot of things that have like 2 and 3 AP that are effective.
Yeah.
So Electro Priests, my thinking is you were going to have some immortals and things. I would put them in the transports. I'd run them up the sides. I'd try to get into the immortal squads and just chew up immortal squads with my Electro Priests, while the Doom Crawlers and the tanks shot at flyers and destroyers and
High value targets.
other targets. And then the Doom Crawlers would also be kind of in the run out and get into the Tomb Blades, destroy. Just get out and be. They're the mobile arms of my army,
Yeah.
because my army doesn't really move very fast. We just got flyers, so the army's been pretty slow moving. But the Doom Crawlers with a laser were the only thing that had punch. Well, you brought the Doomsday Arcs, which have quantum shielding, so the lasers are they're minimum 3 damage, so they're just actively bad.
Yeah, they're not good versus quantum shielding.
So they were good against the planes, but if I'd had the Icarus Array, I'd just had more shots at the planes anyway.
Yeah, you could have cleaned them up faster, probably.
And my thinking was I would trim I trimmed a murder boat, wasn't it? I trimmed, but in retrospect, I think I should have trimmed a Dune Crawler or Electro Priest.
Yeah.
The Electro Priest just didn't get in like I thought they would. The transports got blown up before they got there, and then they just never got in combat. They just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
They just got withered down to fire before they got anything done. So I basically had 2 squads of Electro Priests that did nothing.
Yeah.
And then I had Dune Crawlers with the wrong loadout, and they killed a plane. They did damage to planes and stuff, but they just didn't have. They weren't as effective as I wanted them to be against what I wanted them to be.
Yeah.
So I made, I think, some errors in the list building when I was picking the units I wanted to take. I think now that the heavy rule exists, we were talking about this last night. Maybe I take Castellan robots in place of the Dune Crawlers.
Yeah.
Because now they ignore the heavy penalty because they didn't before. That's
yeah, I'm on board with the Castellan robots.
So they move 8 inches. They got a strength 6 -2 1 damage gun. They can shoot a bunch of one machine.
I mean, mortal wound on 6s with stratagem, right?
With a stratagem, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so there's possibility that maybe I take the Dragoons out and put in robots because they're actually just a hair cheaper, but they have more -2 AP because one of the issues I ran into, I didn't really consider against your army. Your immortals and stuff had 3-up saves.
Yeah, everything in the army does. It's crazy.
So I had a bunch of no AP shots or low AP shots, and even like the Dragoons that get in and I tase you, I got a bunch of hits against an immortal squad with a squad of Dragoons, and I couldn't even kill them.
Yeah.
Because you just got 4-up saves. You're just like, oh well, 4 guys died, and you're like, well, I didn't get anything done with that whole unit that I kind of was leaning on to take care of this. So I think maybe getting the robots in, give me some -2 AP that I can dish out some punishment with.
Which would be good for the Marine meta as well. Like, that definitely leans right into the Marines.
But I was looking at more mobility.
Yeah.
Like, the Dragoons usually get out and take care of what I want, like, just squads of troops.
Well, my whole army flies, too, so, like, I've got an entire mobile army.
Well,
so I feel like they feel especially bad there, because I can just, avoid it until I'm ready to handle it.
Yeah, but so I was like, so I think I made some errors just in list building. In far as maybe I should have taken robots instead of Dragoons. I should have taken a different loadout on my Dune Crawlers. That maybe just because that's the one thing I have complained about Dune Crawlers in the past. They only have D3 shots. So even though their shots are high impact, they're great against things like Zach tanks.
They really should have more
repulsors, things like that, where they don't have invulnerable save.
What is force power?
Like
Minimum 3.
like armor that lacks invulnerable saves, they're great against.
Yeah.
They punch it down with no problem. But anything with an invulnerable save just makes them trash. Like, Troy runs the bird or anything with even a 5-up invulnerable save. You're like, well, I got 2 wounds. And Troy's like, well, I made 1, and then, you take
deal 3 or 4
the D3 damage, and you're like, well, this thing really didn't.
Oh, I could see that. I
would be okay with them having flash 3 shots. I think that's
which if they're blast weapons. I guess not against vehicles.
I don't think they would be. They're just
maybe 2, like they can cut it in the middle. Like rolling a 1 on a Dune Crawler seems.
It does.
So
terrible.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like enough either.
Right.
That's the one thing I have complained about them. Like they're good weapon profile. They just the D3 shots you can't put. I mean, they're cheap, is why it's
Yeah.
like.
was gonna say maybe they won't get a points increase though.
They're like
it
100.
could
They're
just
like
be-
100 with the laser. They're like 115 points.
Yeah, they're cheap.
that's really cheap, actually.
D3 shots is fine there. I think.
But you can only take 3 seconds, so you max get D3 shots.
Yeah, but you've got other heavy firepower. So I mean, I definitely get that.
I think there was, even when we talk about my list going into this game, I made mistakes before I ever got to the board.
Yeah.
As far as I should have given myself, like I said, the robots give me, I think, added AP, the -2 AP, which would have been useful. Basically, I took the Dragoons, so you could spend the CP, so they tase on 4s. The tasers explode. But I think, the robots get 9 shots each. I think I get just as much done with the same unit.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe,
Especially on a smaller board.
I trim maybe a squad of Electro Priests, just have 1 in a transport now.
Yeah.
And we even talked last night with the strategic reserves that maybe I just don't bother with the transport at all, and I just drop them at a board edge.
I agree with that because especially if you can fit some Cadillacs in there to pair with the robots, because that's like a crazy combo.
Well, the plan is now is you can use the destroyers, but a lot of people I think the destroyers are good in 8th edition, but 9th edition, well, the new book, the Engine War, you get the build your own Forge World. So the Forge World, the data tethered Forge World, data horde, you get arc weapons on hit rolls of 5 or 6, get an extra hit. So they have an arc rifle, heavy 2, strength 6, -2, D3 damage, D6 against vehicles.
Wow,
So, and a squad at 3 is 90. They're 30 points each.
that's not bad.
So you can play those guys, and then your Warlord trait is you get to choose 3 auras every turn. And one is ranged attacks on 6s explode for 1. So if you have that guy next to the breachers, the different build of the destroyers, you get basically 2 hits on 6s, 1 hit on a 5. So when you shoot their shots.
Yeah.
And the breachers have an arc claw, so when they attack, they explode on 5s and 6s. So that's, I think, what people are at least looking at, like going forward. Like maybe the breachers, not the destroyers, are better because the robots and if you had destroyers and robots next to each other for 1 CP, they both got +1 to hit.
Yeah.
But if the robots now will ignore the heavy penalty, they didn't before, they'll hit on 4s all the time. So that's when I first started playing AdMech. We had the robots, and they generally just sat in place because you moved, they hit on 5s. They were just
which is bad.
bad. And then, so now you move, you still hit on 4s. So now they're a little more mobile. You can move 8 inches and still shoot at moderate success. But you can still put a dominance with them and roll a dominance out, so at least you get to reroll 1s.
Yep.
I still think call's too expensive, especially if the cost of an army goes up over.
Maybe he won't take a huge point hike or any.
Well, the issue is, I think the best Forge World is now going to be build your own. Like you just pick, because like there's one that gives all your vehicles a 6/7 feel no pain. There's one that if your vehicles took damage that turn, they just heal 1 next turn.
Yeah.
So you're just like all your vehicles like heal 1. All of them.
That's pretty.
And then you can then your characters obviously still heal stuff because that's what they do.
Which is solid. That was effective in the game.
So I think the build your own is going to be the best. So if you start souping kind of Forge Worlds, they don't overlap. So like only the units in this Forge World get bonuses, get that certain bonus, and only the Mars units like calls rerolls only for Mars units.
Yeah.
So like you kind of have to like keep those bundled up over here together, and you have to keep these kind of over here together, and they don't really synergize well as an entire army. So that's the problem with Call. You have to get locked into Mars, and you have to give up things like the custom Forge World, where you can build kind of.
But Call's like a Primarch of AdMech, basically. Like he's a face man. I feel like that's not a model designed to be fielded all the time. It's like fielding Morty or Magnus or Bobby G. Like those are models that are awesome to look at, but they're not like to make them as powerful as they should be. They would be overpowered. So like,
I just think that the Mars Forge World isn't very good.
Yeah, and it may not be, and that's
because the thing is you get
like Death Guard's not very good.
But... Yeah, the thing about the Mars Forge World is you get an extra canonical.
Yeah,
it's like
it does kind of suck to have the character tied to a specific legion.
Yeah, it does. That's what I'm saying. But that's how it is with everybody.
Any Death Guard can take more training.
Yeah, but like you have to be Mars, and then but it's like Strachan. You can only take Strachan in.
Yeah.
But Call also just lets you manipulate your canonical, but you get two canonicals a turn. That's what Mars does.
Yeah.
So it's like the canonicals are good.
Well, then it just sounds like not playing Call is an easy choice, though.
Yeah.
And therefore not playing Mars is an easy choice.
But the reason I got away from robots is because they were only really good with Call. Because you could move them on 5s and still reroll everything and have maybe a shot to like make them as effective as they were if they didn't move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I made some tables or made the mistakes even before I got to the table of my list building setup. And then when we got to the table, I won the roll, so I chose. And I thought, well, I'll go second and I'll hide and the important things I have and try to spread out my units and ignore your and do my best to mitigate your mortal wound bomb. But in reality, what I should have done is just went first and obliterated the plane.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's a which in both of these games is the know your role situation. We were both Alpha Strike armies in that situation. In that situation, we are like you need to destroy a specific target to significantly reduce my effectiveness in that game, and you opted to just guarantee I get that effect. And I feel like when you deployed, like you started deploying with it in mind, but by the time you had deployed everything, you had a huge clump.
Well, we had the
Spearhead, right? Well, deployment unit.
yeah.
We were playing Spearhead.
Well,
That's the whole width of the table,
no,
right?
we were playing the pointy Dawn of War. Spearhead's the pointy hammered anvil. We were playing the one on the long edge with the point.
Yeah.
They were playing the 6 inches up and then
The long edge.
Yeah.
With the spear, which I think the Spearhead's the other, but that one, the Dawn of War, the pointy Dawn of War is what we call it. So the issue was I didn't have enough space to spread my whole army out. They had to kind of clump up the points, but I tried to put like a Dune Crawler here because the Dune Crawlers actually, if you put them together, you get to reroll save rolls of 1 if they're within 6 inches of you there.
Yeah.
But I spread them out because I didn't want them to all get nuked with mortal wounds.
Yeah.
So I was like, I put one Dune Crawler here, I tried to spread them out so that there wasn't like one gaggle of Dune Crawlers or one gaggle of the hover tanks that you could just obliterate with mortal wounds.
Yeah, now I will say on my deployment phase, I was where I made my first mistake. So I had to deploy first, and when I was going to deploy, my whole concept was, well, no matter what, these jets are going to get close enough together, the Doom Blades are going to get close enough together, I'm going to mortal wound bomb him, and that's going to happen. So that's cool. So the main thing there, I was trying to make sure I had a couple of chances to do 90-degree turns and not fly off the board edge. And I was able to do that, but I was so focused on, like, trying to spread his army as much as possible because I was thinking what I should do is put all of my army kind of in the middle and make him feel the left and right side of the board and kind of keep the stuff spread out. That I kind of threw some stuff in the middle, but then like I threw my Tomb Blades way off to the left for no reason, like way out in no man's land. It was like the only unit over there other than the Immortals that were sitting on the objective. And what it did, it cost me 2 turns of Tomb Blades doing nothing in the start of the game because basically what happened is I couldn't get him across the board without running straight into easy just shots on him. So I had to run him on the back line of my board behind cover multiple times just to get him out to actually do something. So I feel like what I should have done was I should have, knowing I was going first, knowing that the Tomb Blades have a really good movement and he has a lot of soft targets for him, I think next time I would place them in the middle, and I think I would just post them up on the center objective and make him pull something out to him, rather than just hide them in this back corner for literally no reason. Because I Veil of Darkness Immortal Bomb on the same corner, and I knew I was going to do it the whole time. Like, I was like, if he puts anything over here, I'm going to throw the Immortal Bomb on whatever corner is softest, and I'm going to Tomb Blade up. But the Tomb Blade thing was just bad. Like, there was no reason to do it. It was like I had an Immortal Bomb, it cleaned up most of the stuff, most of the chaff over there, touched a Dune Crawler, and then there was nothing for the Tomb Blades to do other than expose themselves. So I just had to hide them. And I was all advantage at that point, and I just had to take, a couple hundred points in models and do nothing with them for 2 turns.
They're bikers, right? They have pretty good movement.
Yeah, they have 14 inches.
Throw them in the middle of the table.
They fly.
Probably, yeah. And get just about anywhere they need to be.
Yeah, it was a really like non-logical decision tree to get me there. Like I was like, okay, well they're gonna just, if he puts anything on this flank, they're gonna fly up and destroy it. But then like my whole point was to make him put stuff on the flanks and then Veil of Darkness into the softer flank. So like it was 2 opposite things happening at the same time that I definitely wish I wouldn't have done as far as the Tomb Blades go. I feel like I sacrificed a lot of firepower because those Tesla guns are really powerful. So that was my main deployment issue. Outside of that, I feel like I could have deployed my Immortals a little bit better to where I could have gotten my other small unit of Immortals on the center objective and then just let my Warlord kind of hang back on the main objective because he had no deep strikers and I didn't really have to worry about him touching them. And I could have held more on the first turn and the second turn, because nobody held more, I don't think, on the first 2 turns of the game. We both held our 2 objectives because, once again, bad movement priority. I could have had Tomb Blades there or Immortals there, and the way I deployed allowed me to have neither there. So that was definitely, just throwing away points for no reason. So that's far as my deployment phase goes. My list I felt like was pretty solid. I mean, Necrons don't have a lot of options right now, so it's pretty easy to figure out like which things are best. And I felt that Tomb Blades and Destroyers are better than more Doomsday Arcs. So, and I stand by that decision. I also feel like I've been playing Doomsday Arcs wrong this whole time. I'm kind of just playing them as this model with 0 movement and a big-ass gun. And after playing the game and them having pretty well... I mean, they impacted the game, but not to, like, a degree that was, like, the swaying point. They dealt, like, 2 wounds to a boat. There was a transport one time. And now the last turn of the game was insane. I rolled 6 shots for both of them. But before that, they had rolled, like, 1 or 2 shots apiece, and that was it. Nothing was in range for the guns or anything else. And they were just kind of missed. So I think what I'm going to start doing is trying to fly them around and actually utilize their full weapons profile. That way I'm getting the real 160 points out of it. I'm just so obsessed with having that max power shot, but it just doesn't feel like I'm getting points value out of that. So I definitely also feel like the whole game, every game I've ever played with Doomsday Arcs, I've never moved them unless I had to. And that's just bad, I feel like. So that's something I'm going to try from now on, is really trying to move them around the board, see what they can do with that, and at least give their other weapons profiles a chance, because, I didn't even realize they shot 20 shots. I haven't even paid that close of attention. I saw, and Troy actually pointed it out to me. It's like, I got 20 more shots on there, where once I get in range, those weapons can kind of bring the pain. So that's definitely something I will be improving on. Outside of that, there were some movements, like I said, some awkward movements I did, and I kind of fully realized the power of Destroyers this game. So I think I'm going to try to squeeze another unit of Destroyers and see what else I can cut, because Destroyers have been absurd, and I think making my opponent like have to respect reroll all failed hit and wound rolls on Destroyers in 2 different locations is going to make it really hard for them to make smart tactical decisions.
Well, you also have to be wary now because they won't be able to fall back and shoot.
That's true.
Because they announced that. So you definitely want to spread them up, because you don't want a big unit that as soon as someone touches it, it nullifies that whole unit.
Yeah, and that's very valid. That's a big change. Is there anything in the game you would have done differently other than?
Well, obviously go first, kill the Doom Scythe, so that you can't use the 3d3 mortal wound bomb.
Yeah, which was insane.
Because you killed my warlord and another character, and
I succeeded 4 out of 5 rolls on his units, and it was
I think a sniper squad or whatever. But the tank survived. The tank survived because I could give him 5 up feel no pains on the one that was important. But I scout moved 1 transport up the side, and my plan was just basically I was going to put a transport with Electro Priest on each side and kind of pinch up the edges and try to get into the Immortals and start chew up Immortals, do what I could. And they just got obliterated off the board. And then they get out, and then they have a 5-up save. They have a 6-up save, 5-up invulnerable with a 5-up feel no pain.
Yeah.
They're just not very good on their own in the open. And I did get 1 squad in, but they'd already been withered down to like 3 or 4, and they didn't get much done.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I don't scout move them to get them further in your deployment zone. I try to leave them back and maybe present. Maybe I'll present my Dragoons.
Yeah.
Run them up the side, because they're -2 to hit at over 12 inches. Always -1 to hit, and I can make them -1 in combat now for a CP. So,
which now they're just capped at -1 to hit with the rules change.
Yeah,
but that's happened since
we played. Yeah,
Sigis probably isn't the play anymore.
Yeah, probably not. I will say
that's what everyone's thinking. The custom Forge worlds are going to be build your own, because you can kind of build, like I said, you can build the Arc Breacher list with that one. You can go. There's rad saturated ones. There's ones where if you're under half distance, you get extra AP. There's as like a warlord trait you get in there. There's 6-up invulnerables on your tanks, 6-up feeling of pains on your tanks. There's all kinds of ways you can build your list. Exploding arc weapons.
Yeah.
There's ones that like make your if you're shooting at them at under half distance, it ignores an AP, like on your stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like well, that makes your guys a little more durable. So there's all kinds of different ways you can kind of build the armory, and now with the addition of the Cerberus Raiders and things, the flaming horse guys,
Yeah.
the Pistoliers, and they got the little Terex guys, the little kind of fast attack flyers. People are seeming to think that you could there's multiple kind of axes that the AdMech are now getting access to.
Yeah.
Now that they're getting a few more models, because that was the issue when I got in. Started in 8th edition is kind of when they became their own codex, their own army. There was only like 6 kits.
Yeah.
Like there was 2 of the Sicarian guys. There's the 2 Cadillacs, breachers, destroyers. There's the Vanguards or Rangers. Then there was like tanks, dragoons. There's 2 different builds and electro priests. So I got like 6-7 kits. That's it. Like all the models the army had access to. So now that you got like some more fast attacks, you got the transports, you got the hover tanks. They're thinking that the Raiders.
Yeah, that's a whole nother list build thing though.
Well, but with what I was saying with the Forge Worlds, there's he was talking about the -1 to hit that you'll get away from Stygies. So I think Dragoons are going to lose a little edge.
Yeah, which I can see that. I mean, they're like
I don't think I take Dragoons anymore. In this game, I think I would run them forward because they're -2 to hit.
Yeah.
And make you try to shoot at those.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that once again they're not very durable. 4-up save, 6-up invulnerable.
Yeah, they're pretty soft. I didn't realize how soft they were.
Yeah, that's why everybody's like, they're not very durable. They're kind of that's why they got to be -2 to hit, because if you hit them, they just die. So, I probably would have maybe ran the Dragoons forward instead of the transports with my Electro Priest, because once you blow up the transports, those guys are just squishy. They just got to
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's tough to say I could have spread out my units more, because I was pretty much filled up my whole deployment zone.
You did. There was just like one clump that I was like, well, that's obviously like there was multiple characters and multiple like super duper like valuable and soft targets right there. So I was just like, okay, this is an easy kill zone for me. I think
there was really no way, because I think I had 2 hoverboats, 3 dune crawlers, 2 transports.
Yeah.
It's just like there wasn't enough room in that deployment zone. There's
not gonna be anymore.
Zach couldn't put a Marauder in it.
Yeah.
It literally did not fit. So it was like
you could have spread it all out, but there's a cost. Like, you need your guy to be there to buff your stuff. You can't just put everything out in the middle of nowhere. You got to do the risk reward.
Well, but there was, it's only this wide, and I spread it out as wide as I could, and there was a couple little pockets, but it's 6 inches, so there was no way to get everything.
I agree. You could have spread out more than what you did and not lost 3 characters to it. But at the same time, if you spread all your characters out to the ends of the earth, that way that doesn't happen to them, they don't do anything.
Yeah. That's true. I will say, like, my game, when I went into this game, I looked at his models, and I asked what they did, because there was a few new ones I didn't know, and I knew for sure my #1 priority was killing the Electro Priests. I was just going to make them bad, because it was just 3 points. That's the way I perceived it. So I was like, as soon as the transports become relevant, they're my #1 target. I'm going to pop the transport and have a unit there to sweep up the priests. So that's basically what happened on both transports. Beyond that, the new tank capped the transport, the tank version of the transport. What is that?
The Scorpius Dune. Right, disintegrator.
Yeah, so that was my #1 actual priority for my heavy firepower. I was like, okay, this thing puts out the most shots. It doesn't need line of sight. It can easily kind of sweep stuff up. So that, to me, was my actual #1 priority. Because the first turn, I was like, the transports and the Electro Priests are a non-issue. But from just turn 2 on, I definitely made sure As soon as the transport became irrelevant, I cleared it. I shot everything at it until it was destroyed, and then I always had some sort of unit, whether it be Toon Blades, destroyers. I wasted destroyer shots on Electro Priest just to make sure that they were bad, because it's just 3 points. And then my other priority going into the game is I knew my 3 jets were going to kill whatever, or going to target whatever could hit the largest 6-inch radius. And those were my main priorities. From there, I was like, Dune Crawlers are not a non-issue to me as far as I can eventually whittle them down with quantum shielding. And I've got an insane movement, so I can hide from line of sight. So I've just perceived it as my next phase was cleared. Those were my top 3 things going into the game. And my next concern was the Dragoons, because they could move a lot. And I was worried they would clean up chaff a little bit better, but I didn't quite realize how durable Necrons are. So they were mostly irrelevant because they got huge bases, and I had managed to wrap a Dune Crawler on the first turn with a Veil of Darkness Bomb of Immortals. And when I got wrapped around it, he had just enough room to get one Dragoon to touch my Immortals, so he only got even half the melee attacks onto my own Immortal Bomb, which just bought me a whole extra turn on one side of the board, which was the same side where I wasted the Toon Blade deployment. But that for me, like, I know that those were my priorities, and I think those were still the right priorities. I just think I made a lot of bad movement and deployment decisions in the game. But I feel like I have target priorities for your army correct.
The issue I ran into, you were talking about the tanks and the Dragoons, they're both only -1, and all even your chaff has a 3-up save.
Yeah.
So you just had 4-up saves against like most of my army. So it was like, even when I got a bunch of hits and wounds and put firepower on things, I couldn't kill like a whole squad of Immortals. You know, it was like,
that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
that's how Necrons work.
Yeah, I didn't do good. I didn't do so hot on reanimation rolls. I also think that I get so anxious about pressuring on the first turn. Like, it worked out well this game on my first turn using my Veil of Darkness. But there's something to be said about if you get tied up in combat, you can Veil of Darkness that unit out of combat and across the board, and I could be more tricksy with it. I always feel like I blow my trick wad on the first turn.
well, especially now, you tied up a Dune Crawler, but it hits on 5s in combat and still gets to shoot.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying. It didn't feel like as impactful as it could have been.
No, I couldn't shoot Immortals with everything else, but
if you shoot Immortals, though, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, it's like
by comparison.
I'm not really doing that anyway, so I'm not sure like plowing them forward and into the Dune Crawler is really necessary.
Yeah, I agree. I think I blew. Now the game had worked out in my favor there, but I do think I blew my wad on the Veil of Darkness unnecessarily. I think I could have just ran the Toon Blades up the side, saved the Veil of Darkness trick. In the current deployment, I could have just ran the Toon Blades up, Toon Blades, let them mess with your Dune Crawler and the little unit you had there, and then saved my Veil of Darkness trick for if you actually pressured me with Electro Priest, if my plan of making sure to destroy that unit and the Electro Priest inside didn't work out.
Or a late game knock somebody off an objective.
Yeah, like there were so many other better
so many
things.
times that would be super useful, I think.
Yeah,
maybe not in your army since you fly a lot, but a lot of armies could really use that.
Yeah, and I feel like I just kind of wasted it. But those are the things I think I could have improved on, and I'm going to focus on that. I made a lot of poor movement choices. I feel like I've always in this game had a pretty good knack for target priority for what affects my army. I always kind of know like what I need to kill. I don't feel like I fall into making bad choices on what to shoot at. It's just whether or not it dies.
I feel like that's one of your strong points in the game. You were very good at target priority. You murder what needs murder first.
Yeah. And I think, you're talking about the target priority army. I should have taken that into effect. I think if I take Icarus Arrays on the Dune Crawlers, they're more resilient to your big cannons because they have invulnerable saves.
Yeah.
So like if you're shooting the Scorpius Disintegrators, like they got a -1 mortar. Like they don't do like I said, what Doug talked about with the Immortals.
Yeah.
It doesn't do a lot against Necrons to start with. So if you blow that off the board, like whatever.
I think if you took the Icarus Array loadout, it definitely makes me have to like think about what I'm going to target. Am I willing to sacrifice my very few troop choices to these mortar shots from your hover tanks? Or am I willing to let your Icarus Array Dune Crawlers blow out my flyers? Like for me, it was an obvious choice in the loadout that you had. Like, it was like, okay, as long as Electro Priests don't touch me, I'm good. Let's kill the thing that can non-line of sight me, because that's my next threat. Like, I don't give a shit about the D3 shots when I've got quantum shielding on most of my stuff.
Well, I was never going to shoot at those anyway, but I wanted them to punch down tanks or the Doom sides.
Yeah, and you did punch one down on your first go. You definitely knocked it down, and that was definitely
because you don't have an invulnerable. It's like I said, they're good against things without invulnerables. So I was like, well, I think I want some punch because I know you're going to have some armor. I know it's not necessarily going to be good against your murder boats, but I was like, well, so maybe I just take the lasers because that's what I want. And in retrospect, it just didn't line up well with your army. I think an Icarus Ray with just more shots, just raw shots, are just better. I mean,
I always prefer shots, so
it'd be good against the destroyers, because they don't have the -1 to hit, so they'd be hitting on 2s.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. I love just throwing like massive amounts of dice at problems most of the time. That's the way I've played this game. That's why I love Cultist so much. When I first started playing, like I was like, okay, well, the law of math says if I roll 300 dice, I'm going to get an average, whereas if I roll a d6 for shots and a d6 for damage after wounding, like, that is way more variance than I'm used to. And that's the problem. I'm playing the boats like they're just a d6 shotgun with d6 damage when they've got 20 other shots on the platform and they fly. Like, it's a way more useful unit. I feel like I played that unit horribly.
Yeah, I feel like you were worried about things in my army, but they didn't actually line up very well against you, just the way I had my army built and loaded out.
Yeah, I feel like your whole army just didn't line up well. Like, your only real threat was Electro Priests, and I was like, as soon as they're an issue, I'm 100% killing them.
Yeah.
Because they have good attacks, they have
you had the murder boats, and you could just obliterate the transports, and then...
Yeah, and that was the goal. But yeah, that's our game. Yeah. I definitely, I'm learning more as I'm playing Necrons, and lastly... I know we've been talking a lot, but this is the stuff that I feel like people need to hear, and you want to hear other people's trains of thought so you can have those same trains of thought when you're playing your game. Don't always focus on what you did right, and you didn't lose the game probably hardly ever because you have bad dice rolls. You probably lost because you made bad decisions and you paid for them. I mean, bad dice rolls definitely will cost you games, but bad decisions will always cost you games. And that's just...
This game comes down to movement more often than anything.
Yeah, I feel like movement is huge, and that's why I say, like, I was very aware that I made some really stupid movement decisions. Deployment decisions, which led to bad movement decisions. Like, right. I mean, had he had a better loaded out army, or had he went first, like, me being tucked...
against Necrons, terrible.
Especially when you... I don't want to say you can guarantee you're going to kill the plane, but you have a really good opportunity to take out one of those planes.
You can't
and
hide
that's
from them.
Huge...
You can't play tricks like you can against a normal shooty army where you can hide in terrain and then jump out and shoot stuff. Like, they just fly wherever they want.
And they just pick an area. They don't even pick a target. They pick an area that they can see and draw a 3-inch...
But the rest of your army flies too, so it's like, you're not hiding from that. They go wherever they want.
I think there not being a siege anymore has changed a lot of games. From the beginning, a lot more mistakes are made. Well, I'm going to go second, so I can hide stuff, or I'm going to go first to do this. And
the thing is, this week was a result of last week's conversation. It is better to go second most of the time, and I think and Anvil, he's definitely not an Alpha Strike army, so naturally it's better for him to typically want to go second. But in my particular situation, it's not better. You got to kill the one Doomblade to not give me 5 free D3 wound bombs on your models.
Everybody that won the roll this week chose to go second.
The thing I didn't consider...
Nope, I'm arguing.
No. The thing I didn't consider was the size of the deployment. I thought, well, I'll spread my stuff out and I'll limit his 6-inch bomb. And I'll go second and let it come to me. But I didn't consider that the deployment zone is so small because we kind of tried to allow, or we don't know what the actual deployment zones are going to look like. So we just kind of shaved 2 inches off of it, or an inch off of it, an inch off each one.
Well, we kept the deployment zones the same size. We just didn't spread them as far out.
Right.
The deployment zone was the same size.
I thought we kept the 9 inches from the center.
No, we did.
So
took
we
2
shrank
inches.
a little bit.
Yeah, we make the deployment zone the same size, but the map is smaller.
Yeah, so the middle of the map.
But there was a lot of terrain on the table. The problem is both sides of the table. This just happened to be like there was big chunks of terrain in all four corners of the table, a big chunk of terrain in the middle, and you took what 7 or 8 big units, like big models. So there was.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I didn't consider the actual physical dimensions of the board because I thought, well, I'll just spread my things out, and he won't be able to like nuke too much with it. And then I started deploying, and I was like, oh, I'm going to fill up my deployment zone. There is no way for me to like, spread this stuff out. And I was like, it's just an oversight on my part. I didn't think about it fully. You know, we're
just don't give them the chance. I don't think.
I think
yeah.
you want to go second against mobile armies, like armies that can. You want to be able to control the board, and especially if you're a castle or shooting line, you want them to come to you, right?
Yeah.
But he has an Alpha Strike army, yes, but it's not a get in your face on the first turn, clog up your board. You know, he's gonna come out of his deployment zone, yes, but you're not gonna get that much more of an advantage from it. You've got the long range, so you go first, and you can hammer a couple units. You can definitely take out a plane.
Yeah, shooting armies should typically want to go first. If you have the range to do so.
Especially if you're against another shooting army.
Yeah.
Where it's really beneficial to go second is when it's a mobile army and you can get them out of position, get them before they get there.
Yeah, and that's something that's really good advice. Is like recognize that if the other army is more mobile than you, that you do have to consider letting them go first, because that means you can control the end of the turns. Because you do not want an army with a shit ton of movement to decide where the combat round is going to end, or the
hold
battle.
more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're going to get they're going to be able to kill and wipe off objectives. And
I mean, do you sacrifice hold more to know you're going to kill more every time, so it evens out? And
I don't. I think it's play by play. Like, what are you sacrificing
you
to kill
definitely
more?
have to evaluate your opponent's
every turn. It
every
matters
game.
whether you're going to try.
But I think the thing I didn't fully look at, because I was just like, well, I'll spread it out. I'll negate his bomb, let him use his bomb. And he used both his bombs on the first turn.
I used all of my tricks.
And I didn't lose. I mean, I lost one hover tank and a Dominus and a squad of Rangers, and then another tank took some wounds. But it wasn't
Can you not do that trick more than once?
No. Oh no! You
No,
have to
you
have
can't.
three. You have to have 3 of the ships.
So your whole plan was, I'm going to let him do it once, and then hopefully kill one. That way he doesn't do it to me again.
So you could have hit, like, you killed on first turn, but if you didn't, you could have taken it again.
That's what I'm
That
saying.
would have been pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's only
that's
one
a very
CP.
bad tactic.
But if I shoot my entire army at his plane and it
and
doesn't,
don't kill it, it's a problem.
well, it is a problem either way. But I was just like, well, I'll just negate it. I'll let him come to me, and then I'll
But
do
you
it.
could have literally negated it just
Yes.
by going for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a little.
And you got inside your head.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the thing all of us do, is we get inside our head thinking about, there's so many different rules and movements, and just in your deployment zone, you can easily get inside, like you talk about your Tomb Blades. Like, you're overthinking it, like, I want him to be here, I want him to be impactful, but I really need him in the center of the board. I don't want him to shoot. Like, it's just all these little things that adds up, and then you get into the game, you're like, I definitely screwed up. I overthought this, and now I'm way out of position.
Yeah, with the Tomb Blades, because they have 14 inches of movement. Like, why not put them in the middle, and then I could go left or right, depending on the situation. Instead, I put them way over here to do nothing.
Same,
Like-
same thing I did with my Telemann.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to deep strike this dude in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and had it been a close game,
Wow.
like sacrificing 2 turns of a pretty substantial firepower is relevant. Like,
I feel like
just to derp around the board. Like, I had 28 inches of movement over those 2 turns, and because I had to protect them in my movement, I couldn't shoot at anything for 2 turns. It was just, that's crazy. So, I don't know. It was a good game. I learned a lot. I think Anvil learned a lot. It's just, I learned how durable Necrons were, and I'm every time I play Destroyers, they feel better, especially as I'm getting better with Necrons. The Destroyers are really good, and it's awesome to have Doom Blades as like this amazing distraction card effects, because everybody's like, can't let Immortal Wound Bomb. But then I come in with these Destroyers, and they just house anything. Like, it's like, got a tank? No, you don't. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I pick a thing, and I delete it every turn.
Destroyers would be my priority if there wasn't a 3v3 more
Yeah,
wound bomb.
you gotta take out at least one plane first.
Yeah, and
You gotta
that's
get
the
rid
great
of
part, because they're -1 hit planes, and you have to deal with it. But it's like, I love the feel of that. Like, I love making that was another great thing about playing a Horde army, is your opponent never had a good decision as far as killing shit went.
Well, I
Like,
can
it
go
was
here, or I can go here and get overran. Like,
well, yeah, it's just like I can shoot at this 4-point model or this 4-point model, and I'm shooting my 4-point models at 400-point models. Like, it's just and we're not gonna go down that road. We're not gonna go down
You're
that
still
road.
kind of in the same place. You have multiple heavy, like they're heavier now. They're more points, but you want to get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like Doomsday Arcs are still nasty
They are, and I feel like they made me
Destroy-
better if I play them right.
because they still get their main gun still gets a lower damage profile, right?
Yeah,
I think it's like a spread.
It goes down from I think 48-inch range to 36. It goes from strength 10 to strength 8. It's still got the it's got a D3 profile instead of a D6 profile, and I believe it's 3 damage or D3 damage.
Thanks, D3.
It's
you
probably
get more
D3.
than one shot, right?
Yeah, D3 shots.
Yeah, so that's-
But you also, if you're moving it, you've got 20 shots on the
Yeah.
sides that can actually do something. And if anything comes close to it, you've got flamers. And if you're going to Overwatch, which that was a whole other thing. I Overwatched a few times in the game just to see how it felt. And it's fine. It wasn't great, but I also have Tesla guns. So when I'm Overwatching, 6s are really good. So it felt, acceptable. But anyway, we can move on to the last game because we are going on. Yeah, we're pretty far in. So we'll go on to the last game. This was Troy and Zach.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to do the same format. Give a quick rundown of your list, and then we'll, just kind of discuss the things, what you think went well and what didn't go well.
We did 1750 again, and I took demons. I took a spearhead of horn demons with skull cannons, and I paid 3 CPU for it. We're not sure how much it's going to cost. I just wanted to be on the safe side. I had a battalion of demons and spearhead demons. I had a Keeper of Secrets, Grand and Clean one, Lord of Change. I made them all exalted. I spent a bunch of CP at the beginning of the game, and then I had 1 Corn Demon Prince. Basically, for my list, I ended up being a lot lower on Demon Princes because I usually take 2 battalions and a spearhead. But being that limited on detachments, just getting that many HQs is rough. And that's my list. What did you take, Zach?
I took a battalion of guard and a super heavy auxiliary because I wanted to play my Marauder,
You did.
even though it's gray. But I really wanted to try it out. And we had just heard the super heavy auxiliary cost 3 command points, so I was like, I'm never going to play this. So we might as well just proxy it and make
You
sure
got
that
shot like that morning. Got shot off the.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that it's as bad as my first impression was, and it is. But I had 3 Demolisher tank commanders because I just think they're too good not to play, and then 30 guardsmen, some astropaths, 2 basilisks, a wyvern, typical guard stuff. We played on hammer and anvil because Troy chose to go first. I got to roll 2 dice, and why would I not choose that if it
Every
comes
time.
up?
We had the Crucible of Champions mission, so we could get a bonus point by controlling 3 objectives with 3 different characters.
Being on them.
Be on them.
You don't have to control them. You just have to be on
You
them.
just have to be on them.
Do that.
Troy went first. Moved his Lord of Change up. Moved the
Keeper of Secrets.
Keeper of Secrets up.
Yeah.
Smited some stuff.
Not much on the first turn. I did it a little bit.
Scott shot your skull cannons.
And Troy, you
They-
chose to go first,
I
right?
chose to go first.
You,
Yeah.
you won the roll and chose to go
Well, Troy's an assault heavy, get forward army. Like
Yeah, if Troy chose to go second there, he does a lot worse.
because
I have psychic powers I rely on, which make my army a little bit more resilient. Not too much anymore since I can't stack minuses, but I get feel no pains and I get -1 to hit. So I need my psychic powers to really make my army. I can't hide the big demons; they're huge. See them from
Yeah,
anywhere.
you kind of just have to go forward with
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah, and
choosing
that's
to go second with that army would be a really bad idea.
You want to
yeah.
go first every
Yeah.
time.
well,
Having-
it's a know your role, which his role is Alpha Strike with all of his firepower. Like he's going to shoot a lot of shots on the first turn, so like you want to not give him that. While you may not necessarily want to go first, you definitely don't want him to get to go before you.
yeah, you don't want him to just pound you with demolisher cannons.
Yeah, you want to
First.
move up, tuck everything you can.
My current list can't really do much of a punch on the first turn. I have a couple psychic powers, especially with Hammer and Anvil so far apart. It's just I'm not going to get much out. But I knew having the Lord of Change with 12-inch movement and the Keeper of Secrets with 14-inch movement, I could get a bonus point on the first turn. That on top of psychic powers making me harder to kill, I figured it was just more important.
The bird is basically immortal.
not immortal. He's just hard to kill.
You're never going to kill him.
I guess my question was just, did you choose to go first just for that, or did you choose to go first because of that and a little bit of you didn't want him to go first?
Well, he needs the psychic buffs in order for his first turn to be.
You need it. Like
Yeah.
if he went first, it's bad no matter what.
It was,
There's actually opportunity to kill things that are much worse to shoot at if he gets psychic powers off.
yeah, I think that game, me going first or second, wouldn't have mattered a ton.
Not
The
It
biggest,
Well,
biggest thing was you
I think-
were playing over and killed Demon Prince.
I think it does, because that's another turn of shooting he gets because the bird got in and got to his tanks. So that he'd had one more turn of shooting. Actually, he had 2 more turns of shooting because he'd got to shoot the tanks first. So yeah.
Troy went first. He did some spike stuff and moved his guys up. I killed the Lord of Change,
Keeper of Secret.
Keeper of Secrets, the new model syndrome
That's
stuff.
the Slanesh one, right?
Yeah, the one that I haven't played yet.
Yeah, brand
We'll just
new
say
models.
Oh, yeah, he did that to me.
Because Zach was like, "You're just going to blow my Marauder off the table," and then Troy
Yeah.
didn't do anything to it, and then the Marauder.
Yeah, I shot all my skull cannons at the Marauder and did 4 wounds, I think.
Yeah, I had a orc battle wagon that
Yeah.
I never played.
Same
one
thing.
time.
Zach
I mean,
did to
that's
the
really
He
Beast
flew it
and-
towards me. It's super scary looking. I had to kill it.
It was on the
I
flank,
panicked.
it was on the flank objective.
It was the
So
same
I
thing.
flew my Marauder to his back line because Troy doesn't ever put anything off the front of his deployment.
It's in the front. It's coming forward.
And I could shoot a Demon Prince because of the new character rules.
Yep.
So my Marauder killed a Demon Prince. And
Nice.
I killed the Keeper of Secrets with my Demolishers. And the next turn, the bird came in, tied up 2 of my Demolisher tanks because I deployed super poorly. And that was pretty much the game from then on out. Because then you can't stay in combat and profitably shoot at a greater demon. Like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, with the -1 to hit, the psychic buffs, and the really
He
good
doesn't get to
saves.
shoot it. We treated the
Yeah, the
Demolisher
blast
as
weapons can't
blast,
shoot,
so
right?
we were like,
So
We definitely, I assume that the Demolisher is going to be a blast weapon.
That's a
That's
safe
blast
assumption.
weapons is going to get, I think.
Yeah.
So
Very
I
safe
didn't
assumption.
get to shoot it. It's just like it was super bad. He didn't kill either of them, but they're both wounded. And I left one in combat just to see how it worked. It was bad. And I was paying 3 CP to Overwatch because it cost
do that.
1 to Overwatch. Then you play defensive gunners, and then you pay 1 for
Vengeance for
Vengeance for Cadia.
I think in 9th edition, Guard's going to be over Cadia. I think we're going to let it go. We don't
They're
need more
not.
vengeance for it. We got enough
They're
vengeance
not.
for it.
only if you leave the False Emperor out of this.
I'm demons, man.
So I
No-
paid
no
3
brains.
CP to shoot at the Lord of Change, and did like 2 wounds, got through. Like,
Woof.
it was super bad. But then later in the game, I do the same thing,
Yeah,
pay
you did.
3 CP for my Wyvern to shoot Overwatch.
Killed
his
probably
blood-
like 10 bloodletters, and I
With his
failed
bloodletters because they were over the limit, or over the maximum size for, so you get max shots off your blast weapons, and Wyverns get 24 shots then.
Woo.
Hitting on
Yeah, I
blast,
think that
reroll.
might actually be a reason to not take max.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think there's going to be a lot of reasons to not
So
do
that
that.
was really fucking cool, but
Yeah.
that was pretty much the only highlight. I had to fly the Marauder off the board one turn because I really wanted to kill that Demon Prince, and I couldn't keep it on the board after I did that. I deployed my tanks super bad.
At least you can fly it off the board.
Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't have flown it into that spot if I couldn't
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
But flying 400 points off the board and losing 2 tanks on the second turn is just, I lost
That's rough.
way too much.
He may have also chose Hammer and Anvil because his unit actually fit in Hammer and Anvil.
Yeah, that is true.
It was either that or Dawn of War, and I don't think
It did not fit in Dawn of War.
Yeah, the Marauder's huge.
But
Yeah.
back to your question of why, the main reason I go first is not just the second powers, but also I get the second turn. Like right there, I tied up both his tanks before they could shoot again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So I take turn 2 first, and that's where
That's more
I don't
important.
actually do that much. on
Is
turn
that
1.
more important than making him not go first?
I think
it's
if
just
I-
more important of taking away a shooting phase.
Yeah. The idea is, yeah, basically, that's his goal is
Get to the tanks.
Because
as
when
fast
I'm not
as
playing
possible.
Wartime, which demons don't have access to, I'm just not doing anything on the
You're
first
just getting
turn.
shot in the face.
I have my
every
3
time.
cannons that can shoot on the first turn, and I have some movement, but I'm never making a charge, most likely. Like, most deployment zones don't allow that. So I have to pretty much suffer that firepower. That's where I need the psychic powers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree with that.
I took a minimum squads of infantry, and I took a Valkyrie and a Chimera, so I stuck 2 squads in there, so I had 0 guardsmen for screening, and my tanks got tied up on turn 2.
Yeah.
It's like I did it bad.
I think the game's very different if I only tie up one tank.
So, what do you feel like you did wrong in the game?
Well, I definitely moved my Keeper Secrets up, which was a threat. That was an amazing
It
thing.
was looking all scary.
Yeah.
Coming right for us.
I mean, that's good point. That's good point value to kill that thing.
There were
anyway.
multiple times. Well, he got my Demon Prince, and he should have killed my Sloppy Biopiper because I just didn't screen him well. I just put him behind. The Demon Prince is tricky because the Skull Cannons aren't vehicles, so the character rule doesn't work on them. Right? Because now you have to be within 3 inches of vehicle or. But I just put him behind the Skull Cannons.
And they're all individual units of 1.
Yeah.
So they don't.
So
screen
he's
for-
basically sitting behind 3
Okay.
vehicles that aren't vehicles. So he's not screened at all. I didn't think about that. He just was playing back there. And
Which has happened before. I believe my company commander ate a Valkyrie. So
Sure.
we know it's happened.
this is a giant plane. I could have definitely just thought about it.
He saw it.
And the Biopiper was just behind, so he could take that objective so I have characters and try and get that bonus. And he, for all rights, should have killed him.
I shot 30, legitimately 30 shots with -1 AP into a Sloppy Biopiper.
Didn't kill it?
And did not kill
Left
it.
Yeah, one wound left.
Oh man. So yeah, that's those are good ones. Is there anything else as far as do you feel like you had any awkward deployments? Do you feel like or anything like that?
I was coming into the trouble of trying to screen my units, and then my ones that can't fly, like Keeper Secret and the Great Clean one, they can't get past my screen. And against Zag, like screening isn't that important. I mean,
But then again, the whole time, Zach complained about your line of plague bearers.
Well, I had a Chimera I wanted on the other side of the map, and there's just a legitimate line of plague bears from one side to the other. I can't I don't want to shoot those. They're not profitable to shoot.
Yeah.
But I want to drive this tank over there to that border because I really want recon.
I was able
way.
to kind of.
It's like
he was only able to get recon with his planes, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, Troy just basically has a fence. He just puts a fence up. He's like, you
across
stay
half
there.
the board.
The entire move.
Yeah. So, deployment wise, yeah, I definitely left stuff hanging out that I shouldn't have. I could have screened a little more because he could have easily just deep striked some stuff because he deployed second.
Yeah.
So I would have not known, and he could have just dropped.
And that could have brought the
Then
pain.
you can't
Yeah, just drop the tank commander back there or
I think
Chimera.
if I don't play a 400-point Marauder and play my normal stuff with Hellhounds and Armored Sentinels and stuff, then the deep striking shenanigans could have happened.
Being able to deep strike anything that any army has that option.
It's good.
Like I haven't taken that into account yet when I deploy it. So I've definitely seen holes where I could have been easily, like especially that game. If he didn't spend all his CP on his Marauder and he knew he was going to want 3 to overwatch at
That
least
deep
once.
struck dreadnought comes in
You know what?
behind you.
Yeah.
Or a Hellhound.
Speaking
A
of that,
Hellhound behind me
A
is
squad of Hellhounds coming in behind
Yeah.
is never fun.
speaking of that, you know what I'm really high on in Necrons right now? Scarabs.
Oops.
39 points a unit. Has 3 bases, and they're just deep strike blocks for the late game. Like they're 39 points a unit, and I was reading through everything. I got my codex out for the first time ever. I've had a codex, never read it. I just used Battlescribe, and I got the codex out and I was reading through it and I was like, these scarabs seem good. I went to it and checked them out and I was like, man, these are only 39 points for 3 models in a unit. And they're just deep, and they can explode for mortal wounds. Like
Yeah,
if you
so
get
you
close
can
to it, they're
sacrifice
bombs.
them,
Like
self-destructive.
they have like relevant stratagems to them. But off topic, but I've been thinking about those as deep strike denial. Like once I see all the points adjustment, I think I'm gonna try to squeeze 2 or 3 units
That's
in.
definitely something you're gonna have to think about against any army you play against. Like normally, like if you played against demons, yes, it'd be on your radar. But if you played against Marines,
Yeah,
you can see their army first. They don't have jump pack units or Terminators. You're like,
yeah.
okay. But now you have to think about that against everybody you play, even Knights.
You got to defend your
Like
edges.
you could even get it's not ideal, but a Knight player.
Possible.
It is possible.
What was it?
Just
A
jam a Knight.
Gallant and a Crusader. We
Yeah.
can deep strike.
There's a lot of CP, but you could do it.
No, that's definitely valid. So what about other than obviously? I mean, I feel like you made a lot of mistakes that game, and you also played a subpar list compared to what you would be.
Right. It was not a competitive list. I really wanted to play my big model.
Would you like to talk about your interactions with Morale?
I let your
Yes.
Marauder live the whole game.
It's true.
I barely touched
And
it.
it didn't do anything, so
Yeah, I would like to hear about.
I would like
morale.
the same respect.
Did you play Great Unclean One as well?
I did. He didn't do much.
But like we've talked about it off the podcast. Like the Great and Clean was kind of slow, and he hangs out the back. So most of the time you just kind of leave him be. He's just kind of back there, and he gets some smites off of stuff, but
Yeah,
he's not like the other things that are barreling at you.
Yeah.
Like looking all
But you're
scared.
not
He is
barreling
the
at
deep
him
strike.
either.
I think he's the deep strike choice.
He's the deep strike deterrent in his current list.
That's true.
If you go back
Yeah,
there,
if you come back
that
there.
dude's going to waddle back there and slice you up.
He was a little forward that time because I used him to get the, like I said, I only had 5 characters, so, and he killed him on the first turn. So to get the bonus, I had to kind of spread him out. So he was running around a little more than he normally is.
2 characters on the first one. Demon Prince and the Super Secrets.
He did. It's true.
I thought I was doing pretty good. And I lost all my tanks.
Yeah, I do like the character rule. I think that change is good. I'm definitely not appreciating it as far as I'm not protecting my characters correctly, but
It is a lot harder to just leave a character back and hold an objective with him. Like he needs,
So then they could just get got.
Yeah.
You know?
especially against Zach had 2 Basilisks that did flat 3 damage. A character out in the open would have just been
Oh, yeah.
dead.
I didn't shoot the Basilisk at any characters like that.
But
No,
I just flew my planes around it.
because you killed the Demon Prince first, and then everything else was either.
But I was talking about. You want to talk about your first impressions with morale because this is our first.
We didn't try the new morale rules.
I'm not entirely sure we did it right because I felt really, really bad.
Yeah, it feels really bad. I don't like it. If that's the way it works.
Because I lost 5 guys to smites or fights or whatever. So I rolled for morale, didn't roll a 1, so 1 guy automatically flees, correct?
Well, it's if you fail, so it's still leadership plus the number of your loss.
So you were 1 over their leadership. Their leadership's 7.
You lost 5. You rolled
so
a
you
3.
rolled a 3.
So you failed.
yeah, so you lost one guy.
So I lose 1 guy. Then
And
I
then-
roll.
In 8th edition, he would have just lost 1 guy and that would have been it.
Yeah.
Because it was only 1 over.
Yeah,
Now
but
he
now
rolls again.
you failed, so 1 flees, and then he has 4 guys remaining, and he had to roll 4d6. And then since now he's under half strength,
It's ones or
to
twos.
1s or 2s, and he rolled 1, 2, 2, 4. So 3 guys.
So instead of losing 1 guy,
He
I
lost
lost
4 guys.
4 guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. This goes back to the GW is trying to get hordes under control, though. And
I don't think it's really so much hordes.
I mean, I rolled poorly, but that still seemed.
And you did say it evened out, though, on the next one, though, where you would have lost a lot more.
Yeah, I would have lost the entire squad, and I ended up losing 1 guy because I didn't roll any 1s or 2s, and that felt great.
Yeah.
But,
So the math, it kind of works out.
yeah, I'm sure it maths out and it's fine. It just felt the very first time we ever implemented it.
It
I
was bad.
lost
It
my
was
whole
rough.
squad for no reason.
It was bad.
It felt bad.
But I feel like they did it more to interact with smaller units
Yes, I agree.
that never in like the 3.
That's true.
The
Like,
3
hordes have protection against morale for the most part.
Like 5-man
I guess-
units. are
Yeah,
gonna be
that's
effective
fair,
a lot
that's
more
fair.
often. 3-man units.
I think they're actually going to lower their leadership values so that morale is easier to fail
I hope.
and make
I
you roll
don't,
for
I
it.
don't think they're going to do that.
Well, to get rid of
Nobody
the
wants to lose
well, at
lots of
least
morale.
on the
No,
smaller
it feels
units.
pretty bad.
I think at least on the smaller units.
I do
Like the
think
three-man units.
I think morale's too high on some of the really cheap units, and I think it shouldn't even be in question on 3-man units. Like there's
Yeah.
3 of you. You're badasses. Like
Especially, like, what actually has 3-man units? Like, a few things. Custodes, these are, like, the most fearless.
Admech.
Bulgarian, they're giant dudes. And, these are fearless characters. Like, they don't really need to be running. And usually, if you have a 3-man unit, they're expensive, and it would really feel bad to lose one.
Yeah.
Like Admech,
Terminators.
Eliminators.
Like, Nurgling's like the one 3-man unit. Like,
Suppressors.
Like, whatever.
There's a lot of 3-man units.
and even then, it feels bad to lose a 54-point base.
Huh?
So, with that
Heavy
being
weapon
said,
squads.
what Troy? I haven't given my impression. I don't think Anvil has either. But we'll start with you. I know Chad and Zach did. What was your impression of 9th edition this week, as played?
I mean, I don't take advantage of a lot of the new rules. Like, I don't have any vehicles, so the heavy's not important to me. But I do like that that's a thing. For the most part, I actually haven't seen outside of the list building phase too many changes to my army. I did have morale, but I would take the sloppy Bilepiper and I could roll 2 dice, and I got a lot of bonuses in my leadership to keep my unit alive. Otherwise, they'll just run away real quick.
So, but what do you feel like the gameplay is more tactical? Like,
I
do you
do.
feel like there are more tactical decisions happening?
I don't know about more, but they're there. I mean,
How do you feel about the modifiers? Since they will affect your plague bearers.
I think it's fine.
My question is,
I agree.
will
I think it's
you?
fine.
I made
Like-
things
like-
nice to hit because I could.
Well, that's what
I don't think I
I'm wondering.
should, but-
Would you do it? Like if an army has an ability to give themselves +1, would you do it just to make sure it always has -1?
That's a case by case thing. Like
That's
it
what
depends
I'm
on the
curious.
unit.
Is it?
If it's a unit of Terminators that they're gonna pressions or something like that, yeah, maybe. Because right now on the list I played against Zach, the only other thing to give -1 hit was the Great Unclean One.
Yeah,
And I don't really care if you shoot at him.
yeah, getting to stack it against anybody that can get the +1 just to be sure that they're -1, that seems great. Like,
Yeah, I just want to know from his point of view, is that something you are going to consider in games maybe going forward?
I would say for the most part, probably not. Because a lot of people don't have a blanket +1 to hit. Like you're negating maybe one unit. If there's a warlord out there or something like that that gives a 6-inch aura +1 to hit,
Well, I'm saying like
for sure I'll think
Space
about it.
Wolves and melee.
Well, I'm
That's
just,
the only thing I can think
Yeah,
of.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
AdMech has the data list. I can point at a unit and say that one gets I get +1. Everything within 6 inches gets +1 hit against.
so
that.
see,
Yeah,
that,
so
that
like
would be
against-
something
That's what I'm saying.
consider.
So like there's things, but I mean things of that nature.
That's more of a case to case. Like I don't think I would just blanket do it.
I'm not saying just like boilerplate every time you're gonna +1, but
I
is
mean, there's still 28 of them. They have a 5 invulnerable and a 5 field of pain. They're still gonna be hard to.
He's got 2 damage mortars though,
yeah,
and that's big against white
it
bears.
is. So I will say my opinions on 9th edition. I think it feels like I've played lists on kind of both sides. I've played the massive CP horde list, and then now I played the list that had no CP and was super elite. And even drop, I think the 1750 drop makes the boards look better. I hope with the points increases, it does feel like probably the right size game. Like I was really putting a lot of thought into my movement phases. Like if we were chess clocking on Tuesday, I probably would have ran the clock out or close to, because I was really trying to think about my
that
decision
depends.
making.
The rumor is there are going to be 5 turn games.
Yeah, well, we didn't even get to 5 turns. I feel
Well,
like I would have ran it out
well,
because I spent like I feel like 15 minutes.
The wife,
my
the wife
first
was like,
movement.
"We out." So
Yeah. Well, I mean, on my first movement phase though, I was like 15 minutes before I moved a model, like just trying to figure out.
yeah, it
what
was just
to do.
getting late, and the game was pretty much decided. So we decided, but
Yeah.
it was.
But
I don't think you took extraordinarily long.
it wasn't like a Zach shooting phase. But
You
Or
definitely
Troy
ponder-
psychic phase.
You can definitely ponder over a movement phase. Like that's really where it gets you.
yeah,
I think 2,000 points on the smaller, 2,000 points in 8th edition on 9th edition boards would feel extremely cluttered.
yeah,
super cramped.
that's what I'm saying. 1750 on the board,
If
it
we-
felt
on
good.
the new
It
board,
felt
it
good.
Yeah, if we're assuming
It
that's
feels
about
like 2,000 points does on normal size
well,
boards to me.
it's probably going to be about that's what with inflation. If those 250 points are probably going to get eaten up with the inflation, and it's going to
Yeah.
be pretty close to what the army's going to.
Yeah, that's why we did it. that way.
Yeah.
So I love that. The size is good. The CP rule, I think, as a blanket rule, is better. I think in guard specifically, it's definitely worse. And maybe there could be changes that need to be made there, or guard won't get nailed with a bunch of points increases, and everybody else will, and that'll be their power. Is they can still bring volume of fire versus a bunch of CP instead. Like, I mean, when I think of a tactical army, guard running in hordes and hordes of people until they're all dead is not exactly tactical anyway, so you shouldn't have as many command points. Like, you're like mooks. You're an army of mooks. Like, you shouldn't be the command point army. You should be the horde. Like, you should be like, I got 16 tanks! Deal with it, bro! Like,
The
that's what
incentive
I
is-
imagine.
Incentive is definitely there to take one detachment, one codex.
It definitely is right now.
You lose so much taking another codex, which we're not even sure is
The
free.
the amount of punishment you take for taking a second detachment
Yeah.
is kind of brutal.
The issue with it, I think, still falls within, if you're taking mono faction secondary detachments, there needs to be some sort of,
There may be.
See,
we
that's-
still
yeah,
don't
they
know.
could fix that.
We still don't
Like-
know all the rules. I mean,
Like, I've never been the kind of I play competitively, but I still like when I play Tyranids, I don't ever mix high fleets because I don't think that's a thing that happens. Like,
Yeah.
and when I play guard, I don't mix to learn in a custom regiment. And to play top tier competitive, you would be doing that. So making detachments cost more is definitely going to limit that kind of soup. Even like inner codex soup, if that's
Yeah.
what you want to call it. That is going to get cut down tremendously too, which really powers down a lot of armies. But that's not something I ever personally took part in because I just didn't think it fit
Yeah.
narrative wise in my mind.
No, I can see that.
But lots of people do, and it was really powerful.
Oh, definitely. I do think, I will say that I think that blanket rule feels like it's moving in the right direction. I don't think it felt insanely good for me as a Necrons player, because I got to start the game at 12 CP. I used Imhotep the Stormlord as my warlord, so I got an extra CP, and I spent a CP buying the Airwing detachment. So I realistically probably would have started with 11 or 10, but I ended the game with plenty. I also took the, there's something that
The
lets
one
you
that
get
turn has
CP.
been really nice.
Yeah, the one a turn feels good. I love like late
I
game
don't
too.
feel like I'm running out.
It helped Anvil out. Like he was out of CP and then he ticked it back up and actually and he was like, well, I could save this for 2 turns and actually do something and like do something cool. I don't know. It seemed good, but I really like that. I like the points changes. I like the board. Overwatch. Oh man, that's so good. It saves so much time. I think getting rid of Overwatch as it is the right decision. I feel
hour off every game.
yeah, it feels like I am very critical of GW's balancing choices. I feel like they're the worst company I've ever witnessed in balancing games. Because but what they've done with 9th edition feels very refined. Like in action, I felt like my games were more tactical. Like I was getting characters shot at that like before made no sense that they couldn't be shot at, but I never had to think about it. So like I'm thinking about little things like characters. Movement with a smaller board feels so much more important. And then it feels like a much more tactical game, and first turn doesn't seem as relevant, which is always a positive side to me because I don't like boxing my own builds into, well, I'm a first turn army, so let me make sure I can obliterate that. So overall, I'm happy with 9th. As is, I can't wait to experiment with it a little bit more. But what about you, Anvil?
I like some of the changes that have been done. The heavy rule on vehicles makes sense. It didn't make sense that some vehicles would, you move and shoot a heavy boulder. It's like, well, it's a big tank with a heavy boulder on top. It shouldn't really affect it. Now that it's just going to be infantry, makes more sense. I'm still curious on how flyers / aircraft are going to work with the not be able to fall back and shoot. So other than just incredible movement, what's going to be the thing that differentiates flyers for their points, cost, and whatnot?
So no aircraft don't have to fall back. We're talking about like flyers, like dudes with jump packs.
Yeah,
bikes,
Scepters, repulsors,
destroyers.
Like aircraft, they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, they don't have to fall back. They don't have to do that. They just keep moving. They just keep doing their thing every turn. But if you tie up destroyers, other than just being able to ignore terrain when they move, what do they get?
I mean, that may be enough. Honestly.
Are they going to superior movement?
Yeah, it's insane. Like I will say, when we were playing, you had got your dragoons close to my Tomb Blades, and I just went boop on the other side of the wall, and I was on an objective, and you had to go all the way around, and like that alone is crazy.
A lot of times, given like a Marine or something, flying ability is like 12-inch movement. That's huge.
It is huge. It's
going
insane.
from like 6 to 12.
But before they could fall back and shoot, and so
there was no downside.
Now there's a little downside.
Now they have a little downside.
It's still probably worth it though.
But my question is: are they going to give them anything else, or is it just going to be what it is?
They just balanced it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Out of balance.
And are they going to fix charge on flyers?
We'll have to see that.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because I still don't understand why they just don't do base to base. Like measure the diagonal distance, make that charge. Like they would charge in a straight line. They wouldn't charge over and up. So how a flyer would charge, you would just charge that diagonal line. So just measure it based, just like shooting. That's why you do shooting. If you were shooting something at a higher or lower elevation, you just measure it diagonally.
And they may do that.
I mean, it seems
we haven't seen the rules yet.
That was.
That's what I'm saying. I'd like to see them fix that because they've taken a crack at it now twice and it's still failed both times.
Yeah, but it's basically non-relevant for the most part anymore. I mean, it was a super big deal when Blood Angels captains were doing stupid shit.
Well, when Juice was making them do 0-inch charges.
Not just shit. People.
Yeah,
I think 9th edition feels a lot like 8th edition. Just they've attacked Soup. Like they've really tried to get rid of it.
Yeah.
They want you to play 1 detachment, maybe 2 if you really want it. But they're trying to get you mono codex.
They've got Deep Strike dialed back. Like 8th edition, it was Wild West Deep Strike.
Well, the early 8th edition, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 8th edition early was Wild West Deep Strike. This time it feels like they've restrained the Deep Strike, and they might loosen it up later. I think
like 8th edition, 9th edition Deep Strike right now, like it's the same. Like if you have a jump pack team, they can Deep Strike just like they do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying like
tactical reserves.
Early on, they could do it in the first turn. I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's what you can't do that anymore.
At this point in 8th edition and going into 9th edition, it's the same. Yeah. Only now anything can do it if you want to do the board edge shenanigans.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is particularly great.
But I think they've really tried to
having options.
Like in 8th edition, Chaos, Imperium, and Eldar are just you get so much more for taking those.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no cost. Like, you get access to however many codex each one has.
Yeah.
Like Necrons, Orcs, Tyranids, they're all super hindered by that. Like, you get one codex. Necron's codex is pretty good, but you don't get a lot of options that.
Well, and it only got good because Space Marines got good.
Right. So, I think they've tried to even the playing field, and I think they've done a pretty good. Like, this is a pretty good way to go about it.
Yeah, it feels like polished balance.
You can soup. It's still allowed. It's just going to cost you a lot more than you wanted to.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. Like, now you're spending your CPs to have raw power versus you were gaining CPs, gaining raw power, and gaining stratagems. So it's like, if you want to use all the cool stratagems, pick the best stratagem army of your choice and do that one thing, or spend all the CPs and don't get to do every ridiculous stratagem in 3 different codexes. I think that definitely feels good. Yeah, now the guard situation is a little specifically weird, but
I would like to see more specialist detachments, because right now, not every army has access to them, or at least I don't think they do. They're pretty limited. Like, Guard has like 4. Demons has 1, and it's not very good.
yeah.
It's like, and they're kind of all over the place on what they started doing specialist detachments, and they're like, let's just do psychic winging instead. Let that go.
Yeah, and they're throwing some in there, but so overall, positive.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I like
Positive.
that.
Yeah, great.
It definitely feels more tactical, like we said.
Yeah.
A little smaller game.
So what I'd like to is, I've got kind of like a 2-point question this week. My first question is, what is your favorite rule so far that's been revealed for 9th edition? Let me know at LLBR1NXLL on Twitter, or you can come into Twitch, which is BR1NXL on twitch.tv. Let me know there what you're thinking of that. And the other part of the question is, do you like this format of the episode? Do you enjoy the focus on our games, what we're doing wrong, or do you want to hear more rules discussion? Do you want us to keep it down into like a 30-minute summary of each game? Do you like the really in-depth discussion? I'm genuinely curious about that, and we're always trying to make it a better listening experience for you. And we got to have your input to know what you're gaining the most from, so we know what content that you want to, what to produce. So let me know, like I said, on Twitter, and I'm going to go ahead and let everyone else do their social medias as well. So once again, mine is LLBR1NXLL on Twitter and BR1NXL on Twitch. Those are kind of my main 2. And I'll have a Discord link in there as well. We now have a specifically 40K channel. If you want to come in, just talk 40K, show off your models, all that. And on Monday nights, I'm going to be back on Hobby Night. I'm now streaming full-time during the days, but we're going to do Hobby Night on Mondays. What about you, Anvil?
I'm at EvilBeard on Twitter.
Alrighty. Troy?
I'm at Viking Hard on Twitter.
Alright, and Chad?
I am at Chad B. McKenzie, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Gmail, all the same thing.
Okay. So, I appreciate you guys coming out, listening to it. Like I said, I'd really like to hear your input on 9th edition, your feelings on it, and let us know what you think of the show. And, we hope to hear from you soon. So, have a good day, guys.